Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto joined Young Justice and Harem with Batgirl? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the RaiderXV for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Chapter 1. Enter Naruto. Border of the Land of Fire and the Land of Rice Fields, 4 p.m. local time. October 14th. Naruto was surrounded by the Kyuubi shroud, showing a single tail, while Sasuke was standing in the destroyed stone legs of the Madara Uchiha statue. His form was grotesque, with hand-like wings and skin darkened by his cursed seal. He performed several hand seals and created a Chidori, which then turned from white to black as it crackled in his left hand. He looked over at Naruto, who was forming a Rasengan in his right hand, but then noticed that Naruto's left arm was limply swaying at his side. "Looks like that power comes at a price," Sasuke said, in an almost gleeful tone. He then looked up thoughtfully and said, "This place is called the Valley of the End, the country's border. This is a perfect setting, isn't it, Naruto?" Naruto growled in return. Sasuke chuckled and said, "That's right, like I said, the time for talk is over." Naruto growled again, but he continued, "Well, finally it's ending this battle." His Chidori blazed and Naruto's crimson Rasengan shone brightly. He jumped and was quickly followed by Naruto. As they approached each other, Sasuke's wings flapped, while Naruto's chakra tail just swished back and forth. Both jutsu collided and they pair were surrounded by the energy. Sasuke pushed through and aimed for Naruto's chest while Naruto aimed for Sasuke's headband. Naruto was able to scratch the headband, but then felt a force pulling him back towards the waterfall. He saw a dark opening. He also saw Sasuke flung out of the vortex of energy. The pull increased and he felt himself pulled impossibly thin, and then through the hole. Sasuke landed in the river close to the shore. He pulled himself out of the water. As he pulled himself out of the water, he couldn't see Naruto anywhere. He then noticed the clouds begin to choke off the sun, so that only the area that held Naruto's headband was where the sunshine shone. When the sunlight disappeared, it began to rain in curtains. He struggled to rise and slowly walked away. "I've done it. I've killed my best friend. Are you happy, Itachi?" He asked no one in particular. Several minutes later, Kakashi found two headbands, one with a torn cloth band and the other with the leaf symbol scratched. Pakun was able to identify that Sasuke's was the one that was scratched, while Naruto's was the one with the torn cloth. Pakun looked up and said, "Hey Kakashi, look at that black vortex near the waterfall. I smell Naruto's scent coming from it, but it is closing quickly." Kakashi leapt at the black hole in an attempt to get to it, but it shrunk into nothing before he could reach it. He landed on the water and said, "I'm sorry I failed you, Naruto." Outside Gotham City, 7:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, October 14th, 2008. Naruto was flung out of the vortex at high speed. Being injured, he couldn't do much until he hit a hard surface and rolled as best as he could. He heard a loud sound screech and then a pair of bright lights approached him. He attempted to jump, but was clipped by something just behind the lights. He tried to roll with a hit, only to come down hard on the hard surface again. He heard several bones around his body make cracking sounds. Holly Robinson was driving her employer, Selena Kyle, and her daughter, Helena, back to Gotham from a showing in Starling City. Holly had turned to say something to Selena when a light appeared to the right of them just off the turnpike. She suddenly caught movement in front of the car. She quickly depressed the horn, turned the wheel, and slammed on the brakes. She saw something orange almost clear the roof of the car, only to be clipped by the top of the front windshield. "Selena, I'm sorry, but I think I hit someone," she exclaimed. Selena was quickly out of the car as it finished stopping. She said, as she exited the vehicle, "Helena, stay here with Holly. Holly, I think we might need to make a quick drive to Gotham General. Call the police and have them clear the way if you can." She quickly sprinted the 50 feet to the body of a blonde boy, who was covered in blood and had his arm at an odd angle. She quickly, but gently picked him up and moved to the car. "Helena, up front now," she exclaimed. "But Mom," Helena protested. "Now!" Selena exclaimed. Helena saw the boy in her mother's arms and quickly moved to the front seat, as Selena gently put Naruto onto the seat and sat down with his head on her lap. Holly turned and said, "We will have an escort in 2 minutes at the next exit." She saw the state of the boy and turned forward. She then said, "Hold on." She slammed the gas pedal down and accelerated towards Gotham, How is he? She asked over her shoulder. Selena had pulled off her blouse and began to examine the boy. She unzipped his sweater or top, she wasn't sure, and found a chain shirt under this garment. She saw 2 holes in the shirt, but one held a nasty red scar. The second hole was a bloody hole in the boy's chest. She quickly put her blouse into the wound. Not sure, but he has a hole in his chest. We need to get to Gotham General soon or we're going to lose him. A police car pulled in front of the car with its lights flashing. Already doing around 90, Selena. I'm going as fast as the traffic will allow. Buckle up, sweetie, Holly suggested to Helena. It hurts, Naruto said quietly. Selena looked at the boy in awe. He had blonde hair, and she was sure that she saw blue eyes, but he was speaking in a dialect of Japanese. We're on the way to get you help, Selena said back to the boy quietly. Bachan is going to kill me for not being more careful and not bringing back Sasuke, he said in his delirium. Holly looked in the mirror and said, whoever his grandma is, we should feel sorry for him. If he is more worried about getting hurt and not bringing back weight, he's got to be a ninja. Selena continued to apply pressure to the wound, but also opened his pouch on his right leg and pulled out a kunai. Good call, Holly. What is your name? Uzumaki Naruto, he replied, weakly. Spiraling Maelstrom, interesting name, Selena said out loud. Hang on, we're coming to the exit, Holly said as she expertly exited the highway. She followed the police car a couple blocks until they reached the emergency entrance of the hospital. She stopped in front of a waiting gurney. Selena helped them extract Naruto from the car and place him on the gurney. Miss Kyle, what is his name? The nurse asked as they began to quickly wheel him away. Naruto Uzumaki, he's my nephew from Japan and this is how we found him and nearly hit him on the highway, Selena quickly explained. I've got a faint pulse, I need a unit of O negative hooked up stat, the orderly said as they wheeled Naruto into the ER. They continued into one of the trauma rooms and began to work on Naruto. A doctor entered and asked, what do we have? The orderly replied, white male, about 10 or so years old. Massive trauma to the chest, several other minor wounds. What the hell? What? The doctor asks. He's wearing freaking chainmail, and the jacket is hard to cut. I've finally got a unit of blood into him, but I think I'm going to need another, he exclaimed, and he pulled off Naruto's jacket. He quickly got some cutters and cut the chain off, before he actually pulled the blouse off of his chest. We need him in surgery stat, to close up this wound, and then I want x-rays and a full blood work on him, the doctor exclaimed. They pulled off his chainmail and then wheeled him to an OR theater. Gotham Memorial Hospital, 7:52 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, October 16th, October 14th, 2008. Selena sat in a chair wearing a coat over her blood-stained bra. She was shaking at this point. She had seen how bad the boy was when she picked him up and put him in the car. She wasn't sure how he was still alive. Holly was talking with the police officer that had escorted them from the highway to the hospital. Helena was unusually quiet. For this she was thankful. She contemplated what was going on. She had all but admitted blood relations. Hopefully they wouldn't check that or she might have some problems. An hour and a sleeping Helena later, a doctor came out of the OR and said, Selena Kyle? Holly nodded to Selena, and she laid Helena's head down while getting up. She walked over to the doctor and asked, how is he? The doctor shook his head and replied, he is out of danger for the moment, but he has substantial injuries. Do you know how he got them? Selena shook her head and replied, no, we were supposed to meet him at the next exit after we nearly hit him. What happened to him? Well, as far as I can figure, he was electrocuted, stabbed with a jagged instrument in the sternum, and several other injuries that I can't really explain, some second-degree burns, and other injuries I really can't count. I have to ask, is he one of those metahumans? Selena shrugged and asked, why? Because it was as if his body was healing itself while we worked. The burns are now first degree, and the hole in his chest, at the rate he is healing, should be mostly healed by morning, at least externally. The internal injuries will take a few days to weeks to heal. We also saw trauma to the neck and skull, as if someone had tried to kill him, by cracking his skull and breaking his neck. We can't explain it, and the police will want a statement from you, since you claim to be his aunt, the doctor explained. 10:53 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Gotham Memorial Room 521. Selena Kyle sat in the chair next to Naruto's bed, sleeping. She slowly woke up and looked over to the bandaged boy. She wore a worried smile. What are you, Naruto? She asked, to no one in particular. That is what I'm wondering. A deep voice came from the window. Bruce, I wondered when you'd show up. What can I do for the great dark night? She asked. You can tell me why you're in the area of a boom tube and then you show up at the hospital with an unknown and injured boy. He asked. Selena sighed and began to explain. We were headed home from the Starling City Museum. Suddenly a light appeared to the right on the highway and then the boy was in front of the car. We rushed him to the hospital with critical wounds. That doesn't explain why you're hiding the fact that we have an alien in the hospital, Batman said. Naruto, Selena said authoritatively. What? Batman asked. His name is Naruto Uzumaki. He is also fluent in a Japanese dialect that I can't quite recognize, Selena explained. The Justice League will take over his care now, he explained. Like hell they will, Selena protested. We don't know if he's a threat, he replied. I will let you help with him, but I don't want him to come up on Cadmus's radar or those idiots of your gallery, she said angrily. Will you quiet down, Granny? Naruto said while he still slept. I see what you mean, Batman said. He then said, I'll send John down to see if we can get some early information from him. Selena nodded and then lay back knowing that Batman was gone. A couple minutes later the Martian Manhunter shifted through the wall. Hello, Selena, do you mind if I look through his memories? He asked. Selena shook her head and then said, he speaks Japanese. That will not be a problem, John replied. His eyes then glowed. John was now standing in what appeared to be a sewer with ankle-deep water. He walked forward and heard an argument down the way. He came around a corner and saw the boy in the hospital bed, clothed in an orange jumpsuit, but what surprised him was the giant fox behind bars. How is this my fault, you damn fox? Naruto asked angrily. You should have killed that Uchiha boy, the fox exclaimed. You know I couldn't do that, Naruto exclaimed back at the fox. John then noticed the 9 tails swaying behind the fox and then saw the recognition in Fox's eyes. We are not alone, the fox explained and then retreated into the darkness. Naruto turned and exclaimed, what the hell? You look weird, why the green skin? You have an accident with some paint? John smiled and replied, no, like you, I am not from this planet. I'm here to try to figure out what happened before your car accident and to help you fit into this society until we can either return you or find a place for you. Naruto looked up at him in confusion and said, huh? He means that you ripped a hole in space-time and are now on a different planet, you idiot. Man, I had to get sealed into an idiot, the fox exclaimed from the darkness. My name is John Johns and your friend is correct, John said. He's not my friend. He's something the 4th Hokage sealed in me to save the village on the day of my birth 13 years ago, Naruto explained in a dejected tone. What day is it today for you? John asked. October 14th, and my birthday was on October 10th, Naruto replied happily. Interesting, today is the 14th of October here on Earth. Right now you're in Gotham General Hospital with near-fatal injuries, John explained. Yeah, I was fighting that bastard Sasuke, and our jutsus collided. I guess the release of energy opened the time-space whatever and brought me here, Naruto explained. I would advise rest. The woman that found you has claimed you as her nephew, if that is alright with you, John explained. Do you trust her? Oh, and what is her name? Naruto asked. I trust her to do the right thing for you and her name is Selena Kyle, John replied. That is weird name, Naruto stated. No, you're just used to this type of name compared to the names where you're from. Also, you speak a language that is similar to one on this planet, called Japanese, John explained. It's just common as far as I know, Naruto said. Well, get some rest. I have to go. It was nice meeting you, Naruto Uzumaki, John said and then he disappeared. John's eyes lost their glow and he then said, he is quite the boy. Selena's eyes lit up and asked, you met him? John nodded and said, he also carries a secret. It could be a danger, but it appears that he has it under control for the moment. I would ask him to share it with you. I will work on getting you named as his legal guardian. He is 13 years old and was born on October 10th. This information should help with the cover story you and Batman will come up with. A League member will check on his progress every once in a while. For now, he needs his rest. Selena nodded and looked down at the girl in her arms. She smiled and said quietly, if things work out right you might be getting a new brother like you wanted, well, sort of. Holly entered the room and smiled at Selina and said, they don't have any problems with you staying the night. Seems to be that Bruce Wayne has paid for Naruto's hospital stay. Also seems that there is paperwork on the way from Japan from what I hear with his information. The Martian had left while Holly had entered. October 15th, 2008, 10:06 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Gotham Memorial. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and saw an annoyingly white ceiling. "A man figures I'd be in the hospital," he quietly exclaimed. This disturbed Selina and Helena. "Mommy, he's up!" Helena exclaimed from her position on top of a sleeping Selina. Selina looked into the deep blue eyes and asked, "So Naruto-kun, what do we do now?" Naruto looked at her quizzically and asked, "What do you mean?" Selina sighed and replied, "I'm your guardian now and we need to help you fit in here. That is until we can find you a way home." "You're that Selina woman, which the green guy told me about?" he asked. "Mommy, what is he saying?" Helena asked emphatically. Selina smiled down at her daughter and replied, "We are getting introduced to each other." Helena jumped up and walked over to Naruto. She looked him up and down with a frown. She suddenly said, "He looks a lot better now than last night. When can we take him home?" Selina chuckled and Naruto looked inquisitively at Selina. She then replied to the unasked question, "Yes, I'm Selina. This is my daughter, and for reasons we will discuss later, your cousin. Helena Kyle, Naruto Uzumaki, Uzumaki Naruto, Kyle Helena-chan." Helena smiled warmly at the blonde in the bed and put out her hand and said, "Hi, big brother." Naruto looked confused at Helena, and then turned to Selina. Selina smiled and replied to the unasked question, "She says hi, big brother." Naruto blushed and rubbed the back of his head. He then chuckled and replied, "I guess then it is, hello little sister." Selina smiled warmly and wrapped Naruto and Helena in a hug. After a few minutes where she had noticed that Naruto had stiffened at the hug, she sighed and asked, "We need you to learn English to fit in and I want to know if you're a shinobi?" Naruto nodded and replied, "Yeah, I'm a shinobi and I'm pretty good, although I usually overstate how good I am. But since I'm not back home it would be better if I don't brag too much." Selina took a deep breath and said, "With you only being 13 we will need to get you into school to learn more about where you now live, while we try to get you home." Naruto's face fell and he replied, "I understand, but I really do hate school. I was never really any good at it." Holly entered having listened to the conversation and said, "Then we will just have to figure out how to make it work for you. We are now family. I'm Holly, by the way. I will help you learn English and get you up to speed both physically and mentally. I would also let you know that you're being watched by a group of super beings known as the Justice League. They know about you and your alien origins." Helena wore a look of confusion, but then Selina quietly explained what was being said between Naruto and Holly. This continued for a couple hours. There was a knock on the door and a man in a suit opened the door and poked his head in. He asked, "Is it alright to come in, Selina?" Selina smirked and replied, "Sure, Bruce. Naruto, this is the man who is helping pay for your hospital stay." Naruto bowed while still sitting in the bed and said, "Thank you very much, Bruce-san." Bruce bowed and replied, "It is an honor to help a relative of my good friend Selina." Naruto looked at the man before him and raised an eyebrow. A thought hit him, look underneath the underneath. Kakashi's saying had come to him while looking at this Bruce gentleman. He moved in a fluid motions instead of walking. He found it odd. Bruce noticed Naruto's look at him and then said, "I'm not here to hurt you, but I'm here to help you. Can you tell me where you're from?" Naruto shrugged and replied, "I know I came from Fire Country and Konoha no Sato, a shinobi village." Bruce smiled and said, "I thought so. I have a friend who would like to talk to you if you will allow it, Naruto-kun." Naruto grumbled and replied, "Sure, why not? I've seen a green guy in a blue cloak." Bruce chuckled and explained, "Sounds like the Martian Manhunter, a member of the Justice League, from what I've heard and read, a very good man, not human, but a good man." Naruto just nodded in response. John smirked at the open comm link and looked at Superman. "Is he safe for us to let Miss Kyle keep possession of the boy?" he asked. "I don't see any reason why not. She appears to care for him even with the limited contact. I'm sure that the contact he receives from them deepens the connection, and with her becoming more of a hero than she was before it could only help us. Her helper Miss Robinson and her daughter are also pushing her towards our side," John replied. John smiled and then said, I also felt something about the boy when I was in his mind. He wants to be a good and strong man. We need to try to find his home and help him return. He will become a great agent for good in the universe." Superman nodded as they continued to listen to the conversation. October 16th, Konoha, 3 p.m. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya and asked, "You're sure he is alive?" Jiraiya nodded and replied, "His name isn't off the wall, but he is too far away for us to summon him back here. Not even Pa using Sage Chakra can summon him. The connection is still there, but we will have to hope he will find a way to come back to us, Tsuheim." Tsunade nodded and replied, "Then as of now, Uchiha Sasuke is to be branded a rogue shinobi and a capture on sight, but kill if necessary order shall be put in the bingo books. According to Kakashi, the levels of chakra used was on our level, so Naruto used the Kyuubi chakra and Sasuke used the Curse Seal chakra. The report states that the scent of Naruto was in what appeared to be a black hole or some sort of vortex jutsu that would cover a long distance. What is the range of Pa being able to reverse summon Naruto? Anywhere on the planet would be within range. Given that he isn't on the planet, but is somewhere he can breathe. We will know in a couple weeks if he can find food and water to survive or not. I'm sorry I wasn't there," he said sadly. "I was looking through the records of Sensei and found some interesting notes. It appears that Sensei wasn't as innocent as we first thought, and Danzo is as bad as we thought. From the notes it appears that he allowed the treatment of Naruto to cause him to become dependent of the village for his security. Some of the psychologist's notes stated that Naruto appeared to want attention wherever he could get it, and thus his abrasive attitude. It was one part genetics and one part conditioning. Oh Jiraiya, why did he do this to Naruto?" she asked sadly. Jiraiya shook his head, sighed and replied, "I don't know, I just don't know." October 16th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Gotham. Naruto left the next day after spending time working with Helena and Holly on his speech. Helena had picked up some Japanese, in that she was able to follow some of the conversations, but not most of them. She was just glad to spend time with her mother and especially Naruto, who seemed to get along well with the young girl. The ride to Selena's house was thrilling for Naruto, who had his first conscious car ride. It was nothing like a carriage ride and the city was like nothing anything he had seen before. The skyscrapers reaching into the sky was a new sight for him. He was in awe. Naruto was shown a room and he was in awe at the size. It was about twice the size of his old room in Konoha. It was rather bland, but then again he had just gotten it. The amazing part was that Selena owned the penthouse of a building and that meant she owned the top floor. He looked around the room and found a desk and chair with a laptop on the top of it. The bed was bigger than his old bed and had white comforter, which of course had to go, too girly. He had a window view of the city. He opened the window and stepped outside and found a small balcony. He looked out onto the city and then smiled widely. The smile disappeared and he then heard Holly ask, "Abu, for your thoughts?" Naruto turned to find the woman sitting on the windowsill with a smile on her face. He then replied, "I wanted to become Hokage and being here I can't." Holly moved next to him and wrapped him in a hug and said, "We will do all we can to get you back home, but if you find you want to stay you always have a family here, Naruto-kun." Naruto moved deeper into the hug and she felt the front of her blouse moisten. She smiled warmly at how quickly he had become attached to the family. She knew everything that was going on in the family, even the actual relationship between Selena and Bruce. Heck, she knew about Ra's al Ghul's daughter, Talia, and Bruce too. Now she had a little brother to take care of. Eventually he would learn Helena's secret and they would learn his secrets. Naruto looked up and smiled at Holly. He then said, "Thanks, Holly-chan." Recap up to January 5th. Naruto glared at the books in front of him. It had been here a few months since he had arrived in this world. He had been visited by several members of the Justice League. His favorite and most despised was Black Canary. After hearing his story and worked with him for several hours, she had told Selena that Naruto suffered from multiple psychological problems, but still was mostly balanced, the worst of which were abandonment issues and Stockholm Syndrome for his home village. Naruto had progressed rapidly in learning English, but kept his Japanese fluency. Holly had helped this along by having Helena and Naruto work together on learning English, thus Helena also learned Japanese in the process. Naruto had also adjusted to living with a family for the most part, but chafed at the bit to have some freedoms curtailed, since the Justice League wanted to make sure that the Kyuubi didn't escape. Batman had given his authorization for Naruto to attend Gotham Academy. Naruto knew he was going to be watched, but wasn't sure by whom. Holly had also filled in some holes in his education, including a very embarrassing lesson on human anatomy and reproduction, most of which was in the bath with both of them stark. Naruto didn't look at his sister the same way since. There were books, of course, but Naruto would never forget seeing Holly in the buff. She had also helped him with his physical training. Within the first week she wasn't able to keep up with him, but after that she was able to keep up and had Selena help her run him into the ground. This had increased all of their speed and strength. After a lesson in chakra from Naruto, the family began to learn how to control it, if only a little. While Holly, Helena and Selena possessed chakra, they were limited in the amount of chakra, so they learned how to do basic exercises that would increase their reserves, stamina, along with how to actually stick to walls for a limited amount of time. Naruto was officially adopted by Selena on Christmas Day as a present to him and Helena, who were now acting more like siblings than just two separate children. They would fight, but Naruto would usually capitulate to the younger girl. Holly and Selena both showed the children their secret identities as Catwoman and Catgirl. This had caused Naruto to want to join them on their outings, but Selena had wanted Naruto to learn about others first and learn some restraint when he actually got into a fight, so as to not kill his opponent outright. January 5th, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Gotham Academy. Naruto entered the Gotham Academy and was greeted by the class representative Kelly Reed. Naruto pulled at the sweater and grumbled at the uniform. A blonde girl in a skirted uniform extended her hand and asked, "You're Naruto Kyle, right?" Naruto nodded and replied, "Yeah, that's me, Naruto Kyle Uzumaki. Are you the person who's going to show me around this prison? I mean place of higher learning." "Yes, I'm Kelly Reed and am your student ambassador. We will get you to your classes and try to help you get settled in," Kelly said as she giggled at Naruto's comment. Naruto saw a redhead who was also giggling at his comment to the side. "Well, Kelly-chan, lead on," Naruto said happily. Kelly led Naruto around to his classes and would pick him up at the end of class to get him to his next class. Naruto found most of the classes boring, but under pain of Holly embarrassing him, he at least paid attention. He found the teachers better than the Konoha teachers for the most part, other than them being a little aloof to some of their students. Naruto was walking home, since Holly had told him that he would be better off doing this for some light training instead of having her pick him up in the car. On his way home, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, he heard a commotion from an alleyway. He looked down to see the redhead from earlier in the day surrounded by a large group of boys. He smirked at seeing several of the boys lying to the side unconscious. He noticed the girl was breathing hard, missing her jacket, sweater, but still had about 15 boys left to fend off. He then heard something from one of the boys that brought his anger to a boil. "Come on, guys. We should be able to take one girl and it will be fun to have our way with one the academy bitches. Heck, I like feisty redheads," the apparent leader exclaimed to the anger of the girl. Another guy laughed and said, "I bet she's a screamer." Naruto, not willing to see this happen any longer, jumped down on top of one of the guys. He smiled at the girl and asked, "Would you like some help with these lowlifes?" The girl turned to Naruto and recognized him. She smiled and replied tiredly, "That would be great." The next few minutes were spent with Naruto and the girl trouncing the gang. The only bad part was that the girl had the front of her blouse ripped open and her bra torn off. She now also sported a rather nasty scratch running down the center of her chest. Naruto pulled his pack open and said, "You might want to cover up some." The girl noticed the state of her blouse, blushed, and closed the remains of her blouse. "Thanks for the help, by the way. My name is Barbara Gordon, and yours is Naruto Kyle Uzumaki, right?" she asked. Naruto nodded and then said, "I'm sorry to have to ask this, but can you open your blouse so that I can bandage your wound?" Barbara glared at the boy, but then saw blood begin to soak her blouse. She opened the blouse, thus exposing herself, and angrily asked, "They're happy?" Naruto took her hands into his and pulled the blouse back to cover the girl's nipples. He then said, as he pulled out a round pouch from his pack, "That should do. We don't want you getting a ticket for indecent exposure. Now to clean up the wound and bandage it," he explained. He opened a small jar and dabbed some cream from the wooden jar on his fingers and then spread it down the wound. He then pulled out some gauze and tape. He proceeded to tape the gauze over the wound. Barbara blushed as the boy had seemed to be bothered that she had basically flashed him. She did notice his eyes widen a little at the time she flashed him, but she noticed him control his features to make sure that she was taken care of instead of ogling her. She blushed at the light touch on her chest, but also felt the bitter cold of weather. She began to shiver. He smiled warmly at her and said, "I'm almost done and you can have my coat and sweater to keep you warm." Barbara smiled warmly at him being a gentleman and replied, "Thank you for the sweater, the timely help, and the medical attention." Naruto scratched the back of his neck and replied happily, "Any time. A beautiful girl who is outnumbered and needs help will always get it if I'm around." Barbara raised an eyebrow and asked, "You mean you wouldn't have helped me if I hadn't allowed you to?" Naruto shook his head and replied, "No, I would have entered when it looked hopeless for you. I would rather not let it get to the point of no return, but would want you to learn that someone offering help can actually help." He then got down on his knees and bowed to Barbara and exclaimed, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean see you that way." Barbara blushed, but put her hand out and smiled warmly at the boy in front of her. She then said, "I guess it's alright, but let's keep it between us? Okay? You did help me anyways. I should go to the hospital to get checked up on." Naruto accepted the hand and stood. He then grabbed a light jacket from his backpack and put it on Barbara's shoulders. He then smiled and asked, "Do you need an escort there or are you okay?" Barbara blushed at Naruto's offer and said, "I would like it if you came along, Naruto." Naruto looked shocked and asked, "How did you know my name?" Barbara giggled and grabbed her bag while she explained, "I overheard you talking to Kelly this morning, and you just told me silly. We should hurry, since it is cold out here." She then pulled out a cell phone and made a call. "Yeah, this is Barbara Gordon. Yeah, I was accosted by a group of boys and would like if you would send a paddy wagon to pick them up in the alleyway by 5th and Market. I will file a report at the hospital. Oh yeah, also a one Naruto Kyle is with me and will also give a statement. Then we are close to the hospital and it would be quicker, since it is really cold out here. Okay, thanks, I'll make sure that we file the report at the hospital." She then turned to Naruto and asked, "So should we go?" Naruto shrugged and walked beside Barbara out of the alley. The pair turned and began to walk down the street. Naruto noticed the blush still on her face and asked, "Are you sure you're alright? You seem to still be a little flush in the face." Barbara blushed even more, turning a brighter red, and replied, "Yeah, just not sure how to deal with a guy seeing me in such a state of undress, and thanks again for the timely rescue. I'm sorry if you're cold because of me taking both your coat and sweater." Naruto chuckled and replied, "I'm fine and pretty girl should maintain her modesty if at all possible." Barbara turned to Naruto and asked, "You're not bothered that you saw my bare chest?" Naruto sighed and replied, "Holly sis is kind of free about her body and I live with 3 females. Mom is more subdued, but Holly sis doesn't seem to care if I see her. How do you say it? Oh yeah, Buck. I enjoy the sight of a female, but I'm sort of used to it." "You're the same age as me, 13, right?" she asked. Naruto nodded and replied, "Yeah, I'm 13. Barbara looked like a deer in the headlights of an oncoming vehicle. She then got a hold of herself and asked, "Are you going to tell the officer at the hospital about you seeing me?" Naruto shrugged and replied, "Yeah, it's not like you could do anything about it, and I did try not to look. You are a pretty girl and I thought that when I first saw you." Barbara raised an eyebrow and asked accusatorily, "That isn't because you saw me partially, is it?" Naruto crouched and brought his hands over his head and exclaimed, "I swear. Your hair is a beautiful color. I'm also getting over a girl that I had a crush on back in Japan." Barbara sighed and said, "Get up, I'm not going to hit you. I do owe you for saving me from those thugs, so we'll call it even, just don't expect to get any more of you, got it?" Naruto stood and chuckled wearily. He then replied, "Got it, Barbara-chan." Barbara then asked, "You're from Japan?" Naruto nodded his head and replied, "Yep, I'm from northern Japan, a small village in Hokkaido." "Your English is rather good," Barbara complimented. Naruto scratched the back of his neck and replied, "Thanks, Holly sis was rather strict in her English lessons." "So is your dad going to be worried?" "Yes, and he's the police commissioner," she replied. She then stopped and said, "We're here." The pair entered the emergency room waiting room for Gotham Memorial Hospital. Barbara went up to the nurse on duty and said, "I need to be seen and I also need to file a police report, please." The nurse noticed Naruto standing a little ways back and nodded. She then picked up the phone, but also handed Barbara a check-in sheet. "Please fill this out, and I'll have an officer down here in a minute," she explained. She then turned and said into the phone, We have a code red in ER reception. Barbara walked with Naruto to a bench and began to fill out the form. Naruto became rather nervous and Barbara noticed. What is wrong? She asked worriedly. I don't know, just something is wrong, he replied cryptically. Suddenly a couple of officers came into the lobby and went to the nurse's station. They talked with the woman for a minute and then walked around the waiting room. Suddenly they had their guns pointed at Naruto's head and said, Miss Gordon, please step away from the boy. Barbara was surprised that they were accosting her hero. Naruto offered no resistance until one of them kicked him in the side and said, Stop resisting. Barbara moved quickly and got in between the officer and Naruto. She quickly said, Leave him alone. He saved my life. The officer scowled at her and said, Then what did you need an officer for? Barbara glared at the officer and said, Officer Duncan, badge number 01223. I wanted to file an assault report against a bunch of hoodlums that attacked me on the way home, but apparently Mr. Kyle here is in need of filing his own claims against the police department. Now get me a watch commander. Easy enough, a raspy voice said. Bullock, Barbara said angrily. He looked down at Naruto and asked, Who's the squirt? Naruto glared at the officer who hit and kicked him and replied, The squirt's name is Naruto Kyle. Ah, infamous relative of that cat lady, Bullock said with disdain. You will treat my mother with respect, Naruto said angrily as he stood and wiped the blood from the cut lip he received from the officer. He then asked, Do you brutes often attack the innocent? Or just those who help a person in distress? Bullock laughed and then asked, You had a report to file? Naruto replied, Yes, now we have at least 2 to file. He again wiped the blood trickling down his lip. Yo Duncan, Bullock said. Yeah, detective? Duncan asked. You get to talk to the commish about assaulting a minor and classmate of his daughter. Have fun, Bullock said happily. He then turned the other officer and said, Firelli, you take the kid's statement on both incidents, and then get them to me. The female officer nodded and put her hand out and helped Naruto to his feet. This way, Mr. Kyle, she said politely. She led Naruto to another room and began the debriefing. So what's the story? Bullock asked. He is a classmate and a hero. I was jumped by about 30 guys and he showed up. I got a wound and he did some first aid, she explained. The next 20 minutes were filled with details on the encounter, which Bullock took notes. Bullock smiled and said, You did good, kid. The officers that picked them up said that they were hurt, but not that bad and that they recovered your jacket, sweater and bra. Sorry about the bra though, kid. He did good helping you. You should keep him close. Barbara raised an eyebrow, but said, I think I will. He is new in town and until I heal I might need some protection. Bullock laughed and said, Protection? I think he is the one that will need protection. Now don't go doing anything I wouldn't do. Barbara laughed and replied, I'm not planning to marry and then divorce him. What? That is what you've done with your last 3 wives. Bullock laughed and said, That is true, but remember you're only 13 and have your whole life ahead of you. Okay, I find him cute and he did save me from a gang of thugs. What isn't there to like? She asked happily. A nurse came up and said, The doctor will see you now. Barbara nodded to the nurse and said, Thanks, Harvey. No problem, just don't flash any more boys or I'll have to arrest them, he said in joking tone. Wasn't planning on it, night Harvey, Barbara said as Harvey waved by. Naruto came out of the room with a blush and said, I'll wait out here for you. No need to expose yourself again. Barbara blushed and nodded as she followed the nurse into an examination room. About 20 minutes later she was looking at the doctor, as the doctor said, Whoever did this work did a good job, you won't need any stitches and it might not even scar. Barbara blushed and then said, Naruto was the one who treated the wound. The doctor smiled and said, Then if you keep on getting injured I would keep him around. He does good work. If he wasn't 13 I might want him to do a residency here at the hospital in the ER. Barbara giggled and replied, I'll let him know. The doctor handed Barbara a slip of paper and said, You need to keep it dry for the next day or so, and you can take these for it if the wound becomes inflamed. Any type of over-the-counter pain medication should be able to deal with any lingering pain from the wound. It should be gone fully in a couple weeks. I hope you have a new top, because this one is shot. The doctor held up her torn blouse. She does, an older male voice said from behind the curtain as a t-shirt came over the curtain. She quickly put it on and then said, Hi, Dad. I see my men roughed up your hero, Commissioner Gordon said as Barbara moved the curtain aside. The man chuckled and said, "He even asked for my forgiveness for having to treat your wounds, and what is this about seeing you partially?" Barbara blushed and replied, "The punks ripped my blouse and tore my bra off while leaving me a nice present." She pulled down the shirt a little to reveal a bandage on her chest. "Are you okay? Is it bad?" he asked worriedly. "She will be fine, Mr. Gordon. It will take about a week for her to fully heal, and you should thank that young man for how he was able to treat her wound so well and so quickly," the doctor said authoritatively. Jim nodded and said, "Thank you, doctor." He then led Barbara out to Naruto, who now sported a small bandage on his cheek and one on his head. She ran up to him and asked, "Are you okay?" Naruto scratched the back of his neck and replied, "It is nothing, just a bump and a scratch. I'll be fine. How is your wound?" "The doctor said that you did an expert job patching me up, and if you weren't a student she would offer you an internship here at the hospital," Barbara said, as she noticed Naruto become embarrassed by the compliment. "You need a ride home?" Jim asked, but something in his voice told Naruto that he wouldn't take no for an answer. Naruto sighed and nodded acceptance. Naruto followed Barbara and her father to his car. He entered the car quietly and waited for the impending reaming that the father will do to him for seeing his daughter's chest. Naruto sighed heavily. Jim Gordon began to laugh and said, "Sounds like you're ready for me to kill you, young man." "While I'm a little perturbed that you've seen my daughter in a compromising position," he took a deep breath and said, "I'm glad you were there to help her, and I'll not hold it against you." Naruto sighed heavily and said, "I tried not to look." Jim laughed and said, "Barbara, you've got a good kid there, so I think that you and he are going to get to know each other better. Naruto, that's your name, right?" Naruto nodded and replied, "Yeah." "I want you to walk my daughter to and from school for the next little while. No arguments, Barbara. He and you were able to take out 20+ gang members by yourselves with no backup. I don't usually ask these types of things, and I don't want you to get the wrong impression. I do not approve of what happened between you and my daughter, but she is all that is left to me and I don't want to lose her," he said sadly. "Dad," Barbara said sadly as she looked down, and a tear fell down her left cheek. Naruto sighed and replied, "I will do as you ask, that is if Barbara-chan will be my friend." She smiled happily and nodded. Jim nodded and then drove up to a building and said, "This is our apartment. I expect you here at 7 a.m. to pick her up." "Dad," Barbara said in an annoyed tone. Naruto looked and pulled out a cell phone. He quickly marked the location on the GPS and then nodded to Mr. Gordon. "I have the address. I will be here on time. I'll head home now," he said. "Nope, I'm driving you home and we'll have a talk to your mother, Mr. Kyle," Jim said authoritatively. Naruto sighed and replied, "Yes, Mr. Gordon." The rest of the trip was quiet. They finally made it to his building and Jim parked the car. Naruto held the door for Barbara and Jim as the trio entered. Naruto slung his pack over his shoulder and followed them into the elevator. Barbara and Naruto were in the back of the elevator. Naruto finally said, "I'm going to be relentlessly teased by my sisters." Barbara asked, "Which one?" Naruto replied, "Both, but Holly's sis will be the worst. She will tease me about seeing you and not let it go." "You mean that she is going to tease us both about what happened?" she asked. Naruto rolled his eyes and said, "You have no idea." Naruto entered the apartment, and he immediately yelled, "Mom, we got company." "Naruto-chan? How welcome to our humble abode, Commissioner Gordon. So what do I have the pleasure of having the chief of police come to my house with my son?" she asked, as she glared at Naruto. Naruto put up his hands and said, "I did a good deed and guess I'm going to be punished for it." Selena sighed at his grumbling and looked at Jim and asked, "So what happened?" "Your son saved my daughter from a bunch of thugs and I wanted him to walk her to school for the next little while. I don't see why you needed to come to here and tell me about this. I know Naruto is a good, if misguided child. I'm glad that he helped your daughter, but why the show of you coming here?" "He could have told me himself," Selena said in a bored tone. Jim sighed and said, "Selena, we have a history, and now that you've become one of the elite, and we agree that you've turned over a new leaf with your daughter and Holly." Naruto sighed and said, "I'm sorry for what happened." Selena looked worried and asked, "What is he talking about?" Naruto then said, "I saw her bare chest and then treated her for a deep scratches." Selena looked worried and then laughed. "He is still a kid and has seen women before. It isn't like he doesn't know the human anatomy. He was raised by monks and has been getting over mild gynophobia. Barbara looked between Naruto and Selena. She then asked, gynophobia? Selena nodded and replied, he has several problems and gynophobia is one of them. Gynophobia is a fear of women or females in general. His real fear is about girls his age, since he was picked on by girls his age incessantly. Mom! Naruto exclaimed. Barbara touched Naruto on the shoulder and noticed him go rigid, even though his features schooled quickly. He smiled wearily and lowered his head in resignation. Barbara looked sadly at the boy who had saved her. While he was shorter than her, he seemed to exude an inner strength. She saw the trepidation in his body and face. Naruto seemed to relax after a minute with her hand on his shoulder. She had tuned out the discussion between the parents and focused on the boy in front of her. In the alley he had seemed so strong and larger than his small body appeared now in front of her. She finally heard Selena say goodbye, Mr. Gordon, and her father say let's go, Barbara. She then said, I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto? Naruto blushed and nodded. Barbara and Jim Gordon left the apartment and went home. Naruto sighed and headed to his room in a stupor. Holly looked worriedly at Selena, but she nodded for Holly to follow Naruto into his room. She found him disrobing and asked at the doorway, so you got a look at the Kamish's daughter? Naruto blushed and replied, it isn't like that. Holly chuckled and said, I know, she's a good-looking girl, you know. Naruto sighed and replied, I'm getting over Sakura and you want me to fall for a girl I just saved? Why not, it will help you get over your fear, Holly replied. I don't fear women, they're just scary, he said tentatively. We both know that you have a compensation problem with women, and you thought that you were in love with Sakura. With the help of Black Canary we finally figured out that you were trying to protect yourself, and since she was the one who you latched onto, she became your safety blanket even if she abused you. We both know that you're a healthy teenage boy, Holly said to him. It doesn't help with me getting mixed signals from you and Mom, Naruto replied accusatorily. Your mother and I don't believe that you should hide your body, and we show ours proudly. I know that you're embarrassed to see us, and it has gone a long way to both helping you to understand women and also to understand the dangers that we women present to you. We know that you find us attractive, but also fear what we will do to you since you have seen us that way. We will not hurt you for this. We do this of our own volition. With your study of my body in particular, you have learned a lot about female physiology. Just be happy I didn't ask you to be my husband, Holly said in a joking tone. How and why would that happen? He asked. I'm only 7 years older than you, so when you either reach 16 or 18 we could be married and have children, Holly explained. But I see you as a sister, Naruto replied. Holly chuckled and said, is it that you're worried about a direct blood relation? Naruto, you are from another world and that is all that blocks you, your mind. We aren't the women of your world. Naruto had gotten into his night clothes and had pulled out his homework. For once he was happy that Holly had worked him so hard on learning. Holly waited for him to finish his homework before entering his room. He sat on the bed and began the story of his adventure for the day. Holly had teased him about Barbara's lack of clothing, but Naruto had countered with he wanted to help rather than see the girl. Holly congratulated him on his maturity, but then asked, you did enjoy it though, didn't you? Naruto sighed and replied, I would have been a eunuch if I didn't. I did also find her pretty before I saw her without the blouse. She had such pretty red hair. I figure she will fill out more when she gets older. Holly ruffled his hair and kissed him on the cheek. You should tell her about her hair sometime, she said as she left the room. Barbara was sitting on a rooftop in her Batgirl uniform and turned to look behind herself. Either I'm getting better at sensing you or you're beginning to falter. How did your meeting go with Naruto? Batman asked. It was mostly embarrassing, she replied in a faraway tone. How so? He asked. He got to see my bare chest. That's how so, she exclaimed. I figure a young boy would enjoy that, Batman joked. I'm sure he did, but he acted professionally since I got injured. I will admit he is kind of cute, but he is kind of short for a 13-year-old, she said. Yes, well, you would have to ask him about that, Batman explained cryptically. So did you know he suffers from gynophobia? Barbara asked. Yes, the League knows that he suffers from several maladies, including, but not limited to Stockholm Syndrome and gynophobia, but you would have to talk to him and Black Canary about that, Batman explained. No wonder he shied away from my touch when my father talked to his mother, Barbara said to herself. So what is the plan for watching him? Batman asked. I will be walked to school and home the next little while by him, my hero, she said with slight sarcasm. Batman smirked and asked, Do you like him? Barbara smirked and replied, Don't know, haven't had enough time to get to know him. He seems outgoing at school and has asked to join the gymnastics and track team. With gymnastics almost over, he won't get far in that sport, but might get to work with the team. Let me know how he does get on the team, Batman said. Barbara replied, Sure, but I'm going to call it a night. What, you heard too much, Babs? Robin asked. Robin, I was wounded today fending off about 20 thugs with the help of Naruto, Barbara replied. Robin looked down and replied, Sorry, didn't know. Barbara jumped off away from the building that the Batman and Robin were casing. They then saw Naruto's window open and a short person clad in black, only revealing their eyes, climbed out and jumped to an adjacent building. Robin looked on in awe and said, Wow, he can really jump. Yes, and we need to keep an eye on him tonight, Batman said authoritatively. The duo watched the shinobi foil a jewelry heist and a car theft. The boy did this in less than an hour and returned to his open window. Naruto walked into the bath and found Holly already in the tub. He sighed and continued to the shower. She got out of the tub showing no care about him seeing her nude body. He sat down and doused himself with water. Holly lathered up a hand towel and gently scrubbed his back. So how did it go? She asked. Naruto replied while soaping up his hair, Got a jewelry heist and a carjacking. I think I need to start moving faster with our spars. You already are faster than your mother or I. You more than likely will have to work with either Batman or Black Canary to improve on your speed. Your technique has improved quite nicely over the last few months. Now we just need to get those bad habits out of your system. Then we can use clones to work on muscle memory, she said, and then poured a bucket of water over him, thus cleaning the soap off of him. She then helped him up and walked with him to the tub. They both got in the tub together. Aren't you afraid I might want to take advantage of you, Holly sis? Naruto asked teasingly, but still trepidation oozed from his tone. There are nights I wish you might, but I'm glad we don't, Holly replied. I would never do that to you, Naruto said reassuringly, as he sat down in the tub. I know, just remember we are working on your problems and mine too, Holly said as she slid behind him and wrapped him in a hug. He closed his eyes and a gentle stream of tears came from both of them. Selena entered Naruto's darkened bedroom and saw him sleeping soundly. She turned to find a shaking Holly and smiled warmly at her. I know that you also suffer from a similar issue to Naruto, and I'm glad that you're working on it together, she said happily. I feel safe with him and he with me, Holly replied sadly, but put on a brave smile. I know that Cain wronged you and left you for dead. Naruto and Helena are godsends for both of us, Selena said in a content tone. So are you ever going to tell the Helena's father about her? Holly asked. He is not ready just yet, Selena replied. She is 5, almost 6 years old, and she doesn't know who her father is, Holly said sadly. Cain was your father, and we see how that ended up, Selena said. But he's, Holly attempted to say, but was silenced by Selena smiling warmly and putting a single finger to her lips. She nodded understanding and headed to her own room. Naruto woke early the next morning and found Selena fixing breakfast. Mom? What are you doing up so early? He asked. Have an early appointment, and wanted to make sure that you're okay with walking Barbara Gordon to school. She is a pretty girl, you know, she replied in a teasing tone. It's not like that, Mom. I'm not even sure that we're friends, Naruto said in a dejected tone. Cheer up, Naruto. I'm sure that she likes you. At least for saving her from those hooligans anyways, just look at it this way. You made a new friend in a unique way, Selena said happily, as he finished his breakfast. Well, I'm off, Naruto said as he grabbed his secondary jacket and his backpack. He noticed the fresh snow on the ground in his breath as he jumped up to the rooftops. He then went towards Barbara's apartment. He arrived 5 minutes before 7 and knocked on the door. He was greeted by the commissioner. He bowed and said, Greetings, Mr. Gordon. I'm here at the appointed time. Jim looked down at his watch and replied, Yes, you are. Come in. Barbara, Naruto is here. Be there in a minute, she exclaimed from up the stairs. Jim looked embarrassed and said, You'll have to forgive her. She wanted to look good for today. Naruto looked at Barbara coming down the stairs in her uniform along with beige leg warmers. Naruto couldn't help but stare. She then said, "Sorry for running late." Naruto chuckled and said, "I knew a guy who would have been late for his own funeral." Barbara laughed at the joke. "Sounds like an interesting person," she said in reply. "Oh, he was," Naruto said. He then asked, "Shall we go?" Barbara picked up her pack and then called to her father, "I'm off, see you tonight, Dad." Jim nodded and waved as the pair left the apartment. Naruto was quiet for the first few blocks, but then Barbara asked, "What is it like to have gynophobia?" Naruto chuckled and replied, "What would it be like to have androphobia? My sister, well, sort of sister Holly has that. We work on our problem together." Barbara sighed and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry." Naruto shook his head and replied, "No, it's okay. I've had problems with people all my life. Kasan, and both Helena and Holly have helped me to work through my issues. I've only been in the US for a few months, but I have learned a lot." "Do you have any other issues?" Barbara asked as they walked. "Sure, I have problems with authority, manners, at least that is what Kasan has told me. I also suffer from a weird one I really can't figure out called Stockholm Syndrome. Something about how I loved the village I came from, but was treated like a pariah. Guess I'm just broken," he explained in a broken tone. "Why do you say that?" Barbara asked. "As I grew up I thought to make a girl your friend you ask her out on dates, because I saw guys asking girls out all the time and the girls chasing after a guy and asking him out," Naruto replied, but Barbara noticed him rub the top of his head as if in pain. Naruto flinched as Barbara ruffled his hair. "Don't worry, if you have any questions just ask me," she said happily. Naruto smiled at her and asked, "So are you my friend?" Barbara stopped and looked him in the eyes and replied, "Of course I'm your friend. You saved my life and I owe you." "I don't want you to be my friend because you owe me," Naruto said in a dejected tone. "Well, then we give it time and see where it goes. I might owe you, but you're a nice guy and my dad told me to stay close to you," Barbara said happily. She then said, "I won't be like the girls that you knew before. I will be your friend because it is the right thing to do." Naruto smiled at her and said, "Thanks, Barbara-chan." Barbara smiled and the pair continued to walk slowly towards their school. A dark cave held several figures and one with concentric rings in his eyes spoke. "The Kyuubi hasn't been seen since he and your brother fought. According to Zetsu, he was pulled into a vortex and all searching has not located him. What do you have to say, Itachi?" he asked. "I do not know. If the boy can't be found, what will we do?" Itachi asked. "Konoha has not stated that he died, so we can either assume that he is either dead and the Kyuubi will reform in 9 or so years, or we have to find where the boy went. We will gather again in a couple years to revisit this again," Pain said to the group. Naruto's next few months were spent on him learning about this new world and him constantly trying to summon a toad, even a tadpole. He eventually got some help from both Martian Manhunter and Batman to figure out a general idea of his proximity to his home world. They were able to get a general idea, but even though it was still within the Orion's arm of the galaxy, it was a long ways away and it was still a large area to search. He was informed that the Green Lantern Corps would look into this for him, but it wasn't a priority. This caused Naruto to be disappointed by this news, but didn't stop him from continued training and working on his skills. He donned a new identity called Shinobi. He then began to work with Batman, Robin, and Batgirl. He quickly figured out that Batman was Bruce Wayne, and Robin was Dick Grayson, his ward. But for the life of him, Naruto had no clue who Batgirl actually was, but while he worked with her, and she employed a fighting style similar to Barbara Gordon, his mind couldn't quite bring the two people together as the same person, so he began to form a crush on both girls. Naruto was becoming a hero in his own right. The track season was fun for Naruto in that he would compete and surprise most people with his strength and speed, while he hid most of powers. Naruto also learned his ignorance of females was rather an eye-opener, when a girl asked him out and he accepted, only to have Barbara and Holly bail him out afterwards. Gotham, April 11th, 2009, 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Naruto had agreed to take Hallie Oswald out on a date, even though both were just 13. Holly had driven Naruto to pick up Hallie. Naruto knocked on the door and her father answered the door. Naruto was uneasy with the man to begin with, just from the sneer on his face. "You must be Naruto Kyle," he said happily and then asked, So you're taking my princess out to dinner and a movie? Naruto nodded and flinched as Hallie grabbed Naruto's arm. Yes, sir, I should have her back by 9 p.m., Naruto answered nervously. He had his hand in his coat on the speed dial for Holly. Naruto escorted her to the car and opened the door. Hallie said, "Why such a gentleman?" Holly rolled her eyes and held her tongue about kicking the girl to the curb right there and then. Naruto entered the car and again cringed when the girl began to hanging all over him. Hallie asked, "Is it true that your mother is rich?" Naruto looked at the girl in confusion and replied, "I guess you could say that." Now Naruto knew that Selena had gotten a lot of money from Cirrus Kane, as had Holly, who was his daughter. His mother had also gotten a lot of money from her former nefarious lifestyle as Catwoman. Kane's death was ultimately the end of the torment for both women. He was also weary of the look on the girl's face, almost glee to his answer. The dinner was very hard for him, even with having advice from both Barbara and Holly. The girl seemed to be nitpicking on his social faux pas. The movie wasn't so bad, other than the girl kept on trying to get him to kiss her. When he finally escorted her to the door, she was angry at him and said, "This has been the worst night of my life. Believe me when I tell you that you will regret not showing me a good time." Naruto shrunk under the verbal tongue lashing. He slinked back to the car. What he found was surprised to see Barbara in the seat. She patted the seat and said, "You look like you could use a friend." Naruto nodded and sat next to Barbara while Holly raised the barrier glass. Naruto rested his head in his hands and said, "I don't know what happened. I thought the night went okay, but she told me that it was a disaster." Barbara sighed and said, "I have to apologize now, but I did follow you tonight. Let's just say that Holly isn't a great date either." Naruto chuckled at the comment. Barbara put up her hands and said, "Before you get angry, I just wanted to make sure that my friend had at least a good experience with his first date. Your mom was worried about you and so was I." Naruto sighed and laid back into the seat. "Figures that mom would be worried about me. You know that I didn't really have a family back in Japan, only the monks and the local children. I thought I had friends, but most weren't really friends. I had an old lady I thought of like a grandmother, but I lost track of her and can't get a hold of her. The culture there is, I can only explain it as different," he tried to explain, but also keep his secrets as best as he could. "I have a secret too, but I'm afraid of telling you. I'm afraid it might scare you away as a friend," she admitted, while fidgeting with her hands in her lap. Naruto began to laugh and said, "I have secrets too." Barbara asked warily, "Promise you won't get angry?" Naruto sighed and replied, "Sure, but I bet mine are better than yours." Barbara laughed and replied, "Yes, yours are, at least the ones I know about." Naruto raised an eyebrow. Barbara continued, "You're from another world and only showed up on October 14th of last year, about 6 months ago." Naruto looked at her in surprise and asked, "How did you know about that?" Barbara smiled wearily and replied, "I work with a bat and a bird. They told me to keep an eye on you." "You've been watching me? Was that attack on the first day I attended school a trick?" Naruto asked in almost anger. "You said you wouldn't get angry, and I'm trying to tell you what I know and what is going on," she answered. He sat back, but maintained his mild glare. "Go ahead." Barbara sighed and continued, "I know that your name is Uzumaki Naruto, shinobi of the Hidden Leaf, or Konoha no Sato. You also have an alternate identity known as shinobi. Nice play on being a ninja. I've come to respect you and your abilities, both as shinobi and as Naruto Kyle Uzumaki." He then noticed a blush come across her face. She hesitated and then said, "I kind of fell into a hero worship of you when you saved me. It was totally a coincidence that I was accosted after school. I had been told by Batman about you coming to school, but he told me to talk to you the day after so that you could get somewhat accustomed to school life. I also have been given information over the last few months. From what we know about your fears and your strengths, I don't know all the information. I do know that Black Canary hasn't given us any information, only confirming or denying what we bring to her, and we have had to figure out stuff from either your mother or from our interactions we had with you or the interaction you have with other League members. That comes to the point of who I am and what is my secret." Naruto nodded and began to assimilate this information. His mother had worked with them, and he knew she cared about him. Holly had helped in this process as both of them learned from each other. "That is a lot to take in," Naruto said in an exhausted tone. "True, but this will come as a shock to you. I'm Batgirl," she said quietly. Naruto looked at her with a surprised look for a minute and then hit himself on the head. He then said, "It makes so much sense now. I'm usually good with figuring some things out, but with girls and women, I'm a complete and utter idiot." Barbara chuckled lightly. "I really don't know the specifics other than what Holly has told me. She has talked to me at length about this Sakura girl and how you explained how the girls of your village treated you. Given that information, I would have to say that they were rather shallow. Maybe you, my friend, Kara Kent, and I should hang out this summer." Naruto looked at the girl and asked, "What if I was to tell you that I like both you and Batgirl?" Barbara giggled and replied, "We wait and have fun as kids. I will agree to give you a date, but it will have to wait until I turn 14. Can you wait until then?" Naruto sighed and replied, "Yeah, I guess." Barbara leaned in and kissed his cheek. Naruto put his hand up to his cheek and blushed. On a rooftop later that night. "You are becoming quite close to him, aren't you?" Batman asked. Batgirl sighed and replied, "I guess you could say that." "A quickie for Babs," Robin said in a teasing tone. "Enough, Robin, she is allowed to have a real life and this could work to our advantage," Batman said, as Batgirl scowled at his comment. Gotham, June 20th, 2009, 4:10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Naruto entered the suite that was his home and found the apartment in shambles. He became worried and ran into the living room. He found someone he never thought would be there, the Joker. The psychotic man was pointing a gun at Naruto. "Ha ha! Hello, BOY. Glad you could join us," he said happily. He held up a gun and kept it trained on Naruto as he moved around the room. He then asked, "I want to know if you will return or are you going soft?" Selena, who was tied to a chair and appeared to have been beaten, looked at the clown with a scowl. "I'm a mother now and don't want to endanger my children," she replied angrily. Joker began to laugh while he pulled the trigger, and Naruto was hit. Naruto tried to adjust, but was hit and spun with the hit of the bullet and went through the balcony door. With a crash of glass and the breaking of wood, he fell through the door. Selena noticed a pool of blood spreading across the balcony. She gasped and screamed, "No!" Joker then began to laugh heartily and then said, "I give him point for execution," but his landing was way off. "You just arrived, Bats? And you can't help but try to make others miserable?" Batman asked. Batgirl grabbed Naruto and jumped off the balcony, while Batman moved to protect Selena. "Got to go, Bats. Remember, Cat, we know where you live," Joker said as he jumped off the balcony and a jetpack ignited. He then flew out of sight. Batman cut the ropes and asked, "Are you okay, Selena?" "Yeah, a little banged up, but I should be okay. Thanks for coming." "How is Naruto?" she asked with concern full in her voice. "Batgirl is transporting him to Gotham Memorial," he replied. "We have to talk," Selena said in a stern tone. "It can wait," Batman said as he jumped from the balcony. "Same as always, Bruce?" she asked, to no one in particular. Batgirl entered the hospital with Naruto slung over her shoulder. "He's been shot, please help him," she pleaded as she laid him down on a gurney, as blood ran down her suit. A doctor came up and looked at Naruto's chest. He saw the hole in his sweater and the large expanding red patch in the front of his sweater. He quickly pulled the sweater off and threw it aside. He pulled the shirt open and rolled Naruto on his side. "Nurse, I have an entry wound just above the heart and an exit wound just below the scapula. I need 2 units of B-negative hooked up stat and OR1 prepped," he said. "Right away, doctor," the nurse responded and set off to prep the OR. He then turned to find Batgirl gone. "Weird," he said to no one in particular. Suddenly Barbara Gordon entered the emergency room. "I saw Naruto Kyle being brought in by Batgirl." "What happened?" she asked emphatically. "I don't know, but he is somewhat a regular customer here, as you know, Miss Gordon. Now if you'll let me do my job," he asked politely and wheeled Naruto away. Barbara sat in the waiting area, but was soon joined by Holly and Helena. After an hour, a doctor came out and looked at the gathered females. "How is he?" Barbara asked before even Holly or Helena could. The doctor replied, "He is doing well for someone who had a bullet pass through his left lung and lose about 3 pints of blood. He will be off his feet for a week or so, but he is doing fine. He was also lucky, in that the bullet missed his heart, major veins and arteries in his chest. It also passed through and out of him with minimal damage. The weird thing is that we also found a toxin in his blood, very similar to Joker gas. His body seemed to be immune to it, or at least partially immune, Otherwise he would have coughed heavily and drowned in his own blood before Batgirl brought him here. He will be able to receive guests in a few hours, but keep it low-key and keep it quiet, so that he can heal properly and not break the stitches. Thank you, doctor. I hope you send your lab results to my father when you get a chance, Barbara said, but then said, thank you for saving Naruto. He is very important to me. Yeah, he still owes her a date, Helena said happily. Well, thanks to Batgirl he should be able to give you that date, the doctor said with a smile on his face. Unknown location, Gotham, 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It did nothing. All I got to do was shoot the kid. You said it would have him in stitches laughing. You made the gas too weak. He didn't even break a smile, the Joker said into a group of screens with white images on each one of them. Mr. Kyle's death wasn't the key. His immobilization was. Now we can get a hold of some of his records. You did well, Joker, a male voice said. He then continued, you are now looked favorably upon by the light. Oh goody. So when do I get to pluck some wings? Joker asked happily. All in good time, a female voice answered. Naruto woke to find his family, and the Gordon family in his hospital room. He felt the pain in the left side of his chest and had difficulty breathing. Take it easy, son, you took on the Joker and lived. Heck, you also seem immune to Joker gas, or at least a weaponized form of it. You are now officially brave enough to date my daughter, but please don't bring any of Batman's rogue gallery on any of your dates. Also understand that I will have a squad car follow you on your dates with my daughter, Jim said with a stern look. Naruto wheezed and said, she's not 14, so I can't take her out on a date yet. I am glad I could live up to your expectations. He then laid his head back on the pillow. Barbara walked over to him and took his hand. She smiled warmly at him and said, you only have a little bit longer to wait, and then we can go on that date. Who knows, it might be worse than the one you have with Hallie, or Jennifer, or Sandy. Enough, we both know that I'm bad with girls, always have been. When we go out, it will be what it is, nothing more, nothing less, Naruto said tiredly with a smile. Good attitude, son, Jim said with a smirk on his face. With as much as you call him son, shall I work with Barbara to figure out the wedding invitations? Selena asked with a smirk on her face. They all saw Naruto's face turn red and then heard his heart monitor accelerate. Barbara scowled at this and said, you should wait to tease us until he is better and after we either blow the date, or we have a good time. She turned to see Naruto's eyes closed and a smile on his face. She noticed that he had not let go of her hand. She also noticed the rhythmic rising and falling of his chest, and the steady heartbeat. She turned to the others and put a finger to her lips to quiet the assembled guests. Naruto woke later in the evening to find Barbara asleep, her head on his stomach. She was sitting in a chair she had pulled up to the bed and was sleeping. He raised his hand and gently put it on her head. He heard her sigh and smiled at the sound. He wasn't sure what to do now. He had feelings for her, but they were still 13. She would soon be 14, but it would be several months before he caught up with her. Thanks to her and his new family, he had grown by leaps and bounds. His friends had also helped. Heck, he had learned from his failed dates of all things. Holly had proven to him that he was ignorant instead of stupid. His training had also gone to new levels. He was learning more about chakra from his mother, a woman that had no knowledge of chakra until almost 6 months ago than he had learned in all of his time at the academy. Given what he knew, she was able to figure things out even if she wasn't from his world. Apparently he had the information, just couldn't put it together. He felt the pain in his chest and knew he has literally dodged a bullet. He found himself becoming angry at the Joker and wanting a little bit of revenge, but then thought about what it did for Sasuke. He really was glad to now have a family, no matter who his actual parents were. He was glad for the training he had gotten so far from Batman and members of the League. He also was appreciative of the friendship he received from Robin, Kid Flash, and Speedy. He most appreciated the close friendship he now had with Barbara. A small part of his heart wanted to make it more, but from what he learned from Holly, he should wait and see how and where it goes. He knew now what friendship was. Not the relationships he had in Konoha, but the ones he had begun to develop here on this planet. He knew he was an alien, but the healing he had from Holly, Black Canary, Selena, Helena, and Barbara. His mind kept coming back to the girl who had brought him to the hospital. They were now even, at least in his book. A penny for your thoughts, Barbara said in a quiet voice. Naruto smiled and looked down at the concerned face of the red-haired girl whom he has come to call his best friend. I was just thinking, he replied. A lot of thinking for a self-proclaimed idiot, Barbara said with a smirk on her face. Hey, I resemble that remark, Naruto said happily. Well, you said it, wait, you admit to it? She asked in surprise. Sure, I have been an idiot and will do lots of stupid things from this point forward, but I will try to be smarter, Naruto said happily. Words of wisdom, son, Batman said. He then asked, how are you feeling? Like I was shot in the chest, and it was spiked, Naruto replied. It was, with a liquefied version of Joker gas. You apparently have a partial if not full immunity to the formula, Batman said. He then turned to Barbara and said, good job in getting him here so quickly. I read the report, and his reactions along with your quick dash here saved his life. We're even, Naruto said sadly. He then felt the hand still in his and it squeezing his. I'm your friend and don't you forget that. You saved my life and my innocence. There is no way to repay you for that other than to be the best friend that I can. I'll be here for you if you ever need it. Even if we are angry at each other, I will be there for you. We both know that I was sent to keep an eye on you and I never betrayed your trust even while doing my job as Batgirl, she said happily. I know, Naruto replied quietly. Hey, cheer up, we are going to be on summer break and next year we can tease Dick, Barbara said happily. Naruto chuckled and replied, so are the adults going to keep an eye on us? Naruto asked. Depends on what you're planning. You should also figure out some of those jutsu that you described, Batman said. Easy for you to say. I need to know how to make the elements, and then the hand seals to affect the flow of the chakra. Heck, I'm not even sure I'm good at it. I know only a few jutsu at this point. Mom, Barbara, and Holly are working on how to do new jutsu. Since I'm the one with enough chakra to do jutsu, but not the only one who has it, I'm sort of the guinea pig for how it is done. I just wish I could get a hold of the toads. They would be able to both get a message to Granny Tsunade and get me some training material. I think that they are too far away for me to actually summon them, Naruto said sadly. It isn't an imperative for you to learn new jutsu. You can improve on what you have. We can work on the idea with Captain Marvel about how you should proceed, or another League member might be able to help you, Batman said to him. And who might that be? Naruto asked. Both Zatara and Ken Nelson might have ideas that might help you, Batman replied. Sounds like an idea, Naruto said almost excitedly. June 23, 2:15 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Gotham. Naruto sat at the table in the Gordon household, his left arm in a sling, surrounded by several of the girls from school and Dick Grayson. Dick leaned over and said quietly, kind of like my odds here. Naruto chuckled and replied, yeah, above zero, but not much since you're just getting into your teen years. What? I still have a few months before I turn 13, Dick replied. Yeah, and I turn 14 soon after that, Naruto replied. You're just happy that Babs is going on a date with you before you guys do a road trip. By the way, where are you going? Dick asked. Some place called Smallville to visit her friend, Kara Kent, and then South Carolina for the actual trip, Naruto replied. Just don't cheat on Barbara, Dick teased. Naruto looked at Dick with a confused look and said, she's my friend, not a test. Dick chuckled and then said, so you say. Naruto sighed and watched happily as Barbara interacted with the girls who had come to the party. She then noticed his attention and blushed. She walked over to him and whispered into his ear, now we can go on that date, my hero. Naruto blushed and looked around to find her father watching him. Fear crept into his being, but then relaxed when Jim smiled and nodded. He knew at that point that he had permission, an important thing according to both his mother and Holly in going on a date. He just hoped that when they actually did go it wouldn't end like his other dates. With having Barbara and Holly riding shotgun from a distance, he had learned a lot about his inability to judge females. He watched as Barbara rejoined the girls in the gab session. The doorbell rang and the door opened to reveal a blonde girl and a man that looked a lot like Superman, but with glasses, a different hairstyle and wearing a business suit, as they walked into the house. Barbara's face lit up and she exclaimed, Kara, I'm glad you could make it. She ran over and embraced the newcomer. The man extended a hand to Jim and said, sorry we were late, Mr. Gordon, but it is a long trip from Smallville and my cousin had to come to her best friend's * birthday party, so I thought I would accompany her. Jim smiled and replied, no problem, Mr. Kent. glad to have another adult to a teenager's birthday party. Both men chuckled at this, and Naruto noticed Mr. Kent looking at him. The man then nodded to Naruto, and then to Dick. Dick waved to the man as if he knew who he was. Dick then said quietly, "That's Clark Kent, reporter for the Daily Planet in Metropolis, and his cousin Kara Kent of Smallville. Her stats are 5'2", turned 14 on April 23rd. Naruto sighed in relief and said, "I almost thought you were going to tell me her measurements, with all the information you have." Kara walked over and said, "I could give them to you if you like." Naruto looked surprised and spooked by the girl hearing his comment from the other side of a noisy room. She raised an eyebrow and then asked, "Are you the Naruto Kyle that Barbara goes on and on about?" Naruto smiled and replied, "Guilty as charged." "It is nice to meet you, Kara-chan." Kara looked confused at Naruto, but then Dick said, "He's from Japan and chan is an honorific. It can mean a lot of things. Usually it is used when addressing a girl that he either knows or would like to know better." Kara bit her thumbnail and then asked, "Aren't you going to go out on a date with Barbara soon?" Naruto nodded and replied, "Yes, I'm looking forward to it. She has been my best friend since I came to America and was adopted by my cousin, Selena Kyle." "Ah, the museum security specialist? Yeah, I've heard of her and how she turned her life around when she had a daughter, but the father is still unknown," Kara said. "Yeah, Helena is a handful, she turned 6 back in May," Naruto explained. "Barbara came over and said, 'I see you're already hitting on the guy who is going to ask me out on a date, and I might add has my dad's permission to do so.'" Kara blushed and replied, "But he is cute and those marks on his face just add to it." "Okay, I'll wait until you have your date with him by leaving him alone until then. If you find that she isn't enough for you or it isn't a good fit, just ask her to give me a call." She then leaned over and kissed Naruto on the cheek and walked back to the gathering of girls watching the potential cat fight. Barbara glowered and said, "Man, sometimes friends can be a pain." She then sat down beside Naruto and Dick got up and walked over to the gathering of girls. She then sheepishly asked, "So are you going to ask me out on a date, or what?" Naruto sighed and replied, "I was going to ask when the party was near an ending and also wanted to know if your dad would allow you to go camping with Holly and me next month." Barbara looked surprised and then replied, "As for the camping, I guess I don't think that my dad would mind too much with Holly going too." Naruto took a deep breath and then let it out. He then asked, "Barbara Gordon, would you like to go out on a date with me tomorrow night?" Barbara giggled and then said, "That almost sounded like a proposal for marriage." She took breath and then said, "I would love to go out tomorrow night on a date with you." There was a chorus of awe from the assembled girls and thumbs up from Dick Grayson. One of the girls then said, "I wish my boyfriend was that romantic." The scene broke down into small discussions and general party. Clark sat beside Naruto and said, "That was nice what you did, Naruto. I've heard some good things about you from both Bruce Wayne and Mr. Gordon, almost fairy tale how you rescued her, and now you get the princess." Naruto looked at Clark and said, "It's not a fairy tale, Mr. Kent. I've seen a lot in my short life and have a lot to learn, right, Kal-El?" Clark raised an eyebrow and asked, "Who is Kal-El?" Naruto sighed and replied, "There is no need to hide it. Dick knows you and your energy is the same as a Justice Leaguer. So you can sense energy. Your talents are improving by leaps and bounds, Shinobi," Clark said with a smile. He then ruffled Naruto's hair and said, "Just don't break Barbara or my cousin's hearts, or you will have to deal with me, and angry Bruce and Jim Gordon. By the way, it might be a good idea to invite Kara on that camping trip you're planning. It would be good for her to get out and live a little." Naruto nodded and said, "It wouldn't take much to add a person or two to the trip." Clark then extended his hand and Naruto took it. "Glad to finally meet you, Naruto Kyle Uzumaki." Naruto smiled and replied, "And you too, Mr. Kent." The party wound down and guests other than Naruto and Kara had headed home. Kara was sitting across from Naruto and Barbara and asked, "So where is the camping trip?" Naruto replied, "Well, according to Holly she wanted to go to South Carolina, also not sure if we're still going to Smallville since you're here." Barbara sighed and replied, "Better than the Everglades." Kara smirked and replied, "I don't know, Naruto looks strong enough to defend a couple of girls like us." Naruto smirked and said, "You don't seem like the type who wants a guy to protect them." Kara began to laugh and said, "Yeah, you got that right." "So Holly will give me the details of the trip?" Jim asked as he finished cleaning the room. The phone rang and he answered, "This is Commissioner Gordon." Yes, I'll be right there." Honey, I have to run. Can you and your friends finish with the dishes? I have to run, duty calls. Anything important? Barbara asked. No, just a homicide, nothing big, Jim replied. Barbara smirked and asked, You trust a couple of teenage girls with a cute boy and no parental supervision? Naruto paled, but Jim just laughed and replied, I raised you right and I think I can trust Naruto to be a good kid. Mr. Ken also vouched for Kara here, so sure, just don't make me a grandfather while I'm away. All three youths blushed and Barbara droned, Dad. He then leaned down and kissed Barbara on the forehead and headed to the door. I expect the house clean when I get home and Mr. Kyle you can either stay or head home, it is up to you, Jim said as he closed the door. Naruto then smirked and asked, Anyone for Twister? Kara's jaw dropped and Barbara replied, Nah, we can do that on the trip. Kara asked worriedly, You're kidding, right? Naruto and Barbara chuckled, but said nothing. Kara then looked at Naruto and asked, What she isn't enough? Are you looking for a threesome? Naruto began to laugh and then slapped his knee. He then pointed at Kara and said, You should have seen the look on your face. It was priceless. Kara clenched a fist, but Barbara gently grabbed her arm and said, Super, go meet Shinobi. He is the #1 prankster at Gotham Academy. Batman has even learned a few things about non-lethal traps from him. Kara blushed and then said, I was crushing on a hero? Great Kal-El will never let me live this down. Naruto chuckled and said, He warned me to not break either of your hearts, so I guess I'll have to date you both. Barbara opened her mouth and exclaimed, Naruto. You will date me and then see if I let you date another girl. Naruto put his hands up in acceptance of her declaration. After small talk for the next hour or so, Naruto bid the girls farewell. He received a kiss on each cheek from the girls. He smiled as he walked home. About a block from his building he sensed another presence. His face became dark and he asked, Who is there? A beautiful woman with long dark hair came out of the darkness. Your senses are good, but I would continue to refine them, Naruto-kun. I am Talia al Ghul, daughter to Raz al Ghul, leader of the League of Shadows. I wish to talk to your mother if I could, Talia said with a smile. What is your business with her? He asked pointedly. We have a mutual friend who is shirking his responsibilities and wish to discuss how your mother intends to deal with this issue, she admitted. Sure, come on, but leave your bodyguards behind, Naruto said, as he waved for her to follow him. She nodded and the men in the shadows disappeared. They quietly walked into the building and up the elevator. Naruto entered the apartment and exclaimed, Mom, you have a guest. Talia al Ghul. I'm going to talk to Holly, since we have another person going on the trip next month. Naruto walked off and left Talia in the living room. Selena entered the room and said in an annoyed tone, Talia. Talia sighed and then said, I wish for Damon to meet his sister. If that is all right with you? Selena sighed and offered a seat to the other woman. Holly was in the bath relaxing and Naruto opened the door. She sat facing the door with her legs open and her hands on the side of the tub. What's up, Naruto-kun? She asked. Naruto sighed and asked, We're never going to be normal and can you at least try to be modest at some point? Holly smirked and replied, Normal is overrated. You didn't come here to ogle me, did you? Naruto chuckled and replied, Nah, I've seen you enough that it is burned into my memory. Now for the important stuff. We have another passenger for our trip, Kara Kent, reporter Clark Kent's cousin. Holly smirked and said, The more the merrier. Does she know how to take care of herself? Naruto chuckled and replied, She should be fine. I also brought up the Twister thing and Barbara-chan suggested it on the trip. Holly began to laugh and then asked, Was she serious or was she kidding? Naruto smiled and replied, She was kidding, but she is serious about the date tomorrow night. Sounds like you're serious about her, Holly said in a serious tone. Naruto looked up and smiled. Not sure, but she is my best friend and I don't want to ruin it. Holly stood up and moved over to Naruto. She wrapped him in a hug and said, If she is truly your friend then she will not be affected by how the date goes, good or bad. If she does dump you then you could go after that Kara girl or wait for me. Holly-kun! Naruto exclaimed. Holly smiled and said, Just saying. If no other girl will have you, I will give you children. Naruto blushed, but leaned into his adopted sister. I love you, Holly-kun, but not in that way. I know, but remember it is on the table, Holly said quietly. You should find a nice guy for yourself, Holly-kun, Naruto said. When we find one that I can stand we will see, Holly replied. Okay, you win, Naruto said happily. The door to the bath opened and a nude Selena entered the room. I just had the most interesting conversation with Talia al Ghul. Naruto blushed and asked, Mom, do you have to be that way? Selena leaned down and kissed Naruto on the forehead, burying his face in her cleavage. She smirked and replied, What do you mean, Naruto-chan? She then walked over to the seat and began to wash herself. She then rinsed off and then entered the tub. You are supposed to be nude while in the bathroom unless you're cleaning it, and I don't see any cleaning supplies. Now get cleaned up and tell me about the party. Naruto exited the bath into the changing room and disrobed. He then followed suit of his mother and entered the bath with his adopted mother and sister. The trio talked about the day's events and what would happen later. June 24th, 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Gotham. Naruto stood on the porch of the Gordons with a rose behind his back. Standing 4 foot 11 inches, he knew he was shorter than his date, but figured it only mattered to one of his earlier dates. He was determined to give Barbara a good date if he could. He knocked and Kara answered the door. He blushed when he entered to see her in only a tank top and panties. Naruto said nervously, Kara-chan, did you know that you're in only your underwear? Kara turned and bent over, giving him a good view of her breasts through the top of the tank top with her hands behind her. Sure did. I figured I would help break the ice, she said as she turned and headed up the stairs. Damn it, Kara! Are you trying to seduce my date? Barbara said from the top of the stairs. Maybe, but not tonight. You two have fun and don't do anything I wouldn't, she said teasingly. Like walk around nearly, Naruto said in a dejected tone. Not like you haven't seen women before, or at least that is what I've heard, Kara replied in teasing tone. Man, I come here to a planet where the women are more perverted than where I came from, Naruto said under his breath. He then smirked and continued, not that I mind. Like a boy with raging hormones would mind, Kara said happily. I just hope that we have a good time. When Naruto stopped and couldn't take his eyes off of Barbara on the stairs. She was wearing a jean skirt, a pink blouse, her hair left to flow with a slight styling. Naruto quietly said, beautiful. Barbara walked up to Naruto and kissed him on the cheek and said, thanks. Naruto then pulled the pink rose from behind him to give to Barbara and said, this is for you. I figured pink was a better color than the white or yellow I've been giving out to my other dates. Barbara blushed and replied, good choice, since red is love and we aren't there yet, but if you are as good of a sweet talker as you have been then we might have to go to red. Kara giggled and said, wow, a knight in shining armor? If it isn't too late, could we share him? Naruto's jaw fell and he looked back and forth between Barbara and Kara. Barbara giggled and replied, we will see. We have to survive tonight first. Naruto chuckled and said, let's go before the girl in her underwear decides to have us both in a three-way. Naruto then winked at Kara, who blushed, but then smirked and pulled up her tank top, showing off her breasts. Now we're even, Babs, Kara said. Barbara sighed and pulled Naruto out the door. She also said, you were right, see you later, Kara. Naruto sighed and asked, why is it that all the girls my life now wants to show me their bodies? Barbara sighed and said, down tiger, we have enough time for foreplay when we get older. Naruto laughed and opened the door to the limo and helped Barbara get into the car. Thank you, she said happily. The pair went to a move, Star Trek, and afterwards went to a moderate restaurant. Naruto and Barbara sat across from each other in a small booth. Barbara smirked and asked when Naruto looked down, got the mirror angled right to see my panties? They're pink just like my brow. Naruto blushed and said, I was hoping to get away from the perversions a little and talk about us. Barbara folded her hands under her chin and said, wow, a serious conversation on our first date. So we go all the way on the second? Married on the third? Naruto blushed even further and began to blather, Amma. Barbara began to laugh and put a hand on his to relax him. Easy there, I'm just joking with you, since we're friends, but I wasn't lying about the underwear. Naruto sighed and Barbara laughed. So what did you want to talk about? Life before we met, he replied. We have the time, what do you want to know? She asked. Batgirl, how did you become her? He asked. My dad was a detective and then a captain with the Vice Squad. My mother was killed by a thug and Batman saved me from them when I was about 8. I guess I idolized him and began to emulate him. In response, I took several martial arts classes and got to a black belt fairly quickly. Eventually, I made a costume, Batgirl, and went to a Wayne party with my father just after he became commissioner. He didn't pay attention to what I wore because I hid it until we got there. I saved Mr. Wayne from Mothman, but also screwed up and let him get away. Batman wasn't pleased, but told me to come back in a year or so. He had just conscripted Dick, so his training took precedence. I got a new suit and better equipment. I've been doing it since I was 10 or so. I can say not much can replace the thrill of chasing down a bad guy, but being here is close second so far. I've tried to keep my school work up and do the crime gig, but I always had school take top priority, she explained. The waiter came up and took their order and left them. Naruto sighed and smiled. Guess it is my turn. I was born in the village of Konoha no Sato, the village hidden in the leaves, on the night of the Kyuubi attack, nearly 14 years ago. I have no clue who my parents were. The old man would never tell me. Heck, given what I've learned, I more than likely wouldn't have learned what I have learned so far. I learned that I contained the Kyuubi, a demon that was sealed within me soon after my birth. I had a hard childhood, but I tried to make the bullies pay by any means I could. He sighed heavily and continued, You know, the hardest part was the isolation that the adults and most of the kids gave me growing up. Hope was all I had. Barbara squeezed his hand and he rubbed his eyes to wipe the tears from his eyes. He smiled sadly and said, Sorry for being a softie and ruining our date. Barbara squeezed his hand and said, I like this side of you. Not that I want to see it all the time, but it is sweet and hearing your story is interesting. Naruto nodded and asked, I have a question for you? Sure, go ahead, Barbara replied. What is it with the dark brooding type that girls find so attractive? He asked. Barbara sighs and replies, I'm not sure myself. It might be that they find him attractive, or maybe they think that he might be a challenge, or they might want him to be a trophy piece. I guess that explains it, somewhat. Sasuke, the guy I fought, and the reason that I'm here now. He had a fixation with killing his brother who killed the rest of his clan, he explained. Now that adds to the fascination. He is the dark broken boy who needs to be fixed or needs the healing touch of a woman, she replied and began to giggle. What? He asked. We women can be so shallow and vindictive. Did they fight over him? She asked. Yeah, even to the point of beating me to get to sit next to him. He wouldn't give them the time of day though, he replied. Even more points for the idiots of my gender to be aggressive. Given what you told me, you were the pariah and he was the prince? She asked. Yes, something like that, he replied. I would venture to guess that you were the child of someone who was one of the higher-ups in the village, to more than likely to ensure your loyalty. I'm guessing that your parents died on the night of your birth. Heck with your leader not telling you who your parents were, I'm guessing that you may be related to a Hokage or something like that, she speculated. Don't tease me like that. I would just flip if I was related to one of the Hokages, he said happily. The two sighed heavily, and then the food came. Barbara laughed at Naruto not having as much etiquette as she had expected. They finished the meal with small talk about the movie and went back to Barbara's house. He was standing outside the door, and he scuffed his foot on the ground. I had a good time tonight, thanks Barbara-chan, he said happily. Barbara blushed and asked, Is it true that you reserve your first kiss for someone special? Naruto chuckled and replied, Yeah, but I accidentally kissed Sasuke, so he was interrupted by Barbara pulling his face to hers and kissing him full on the lips. She let him go and said, I had a really good time too, Naruto-kun. We should do it again. Talk to you tomorrow. She smirked as she entered apartment, and closed the door behind herself. She then slid down the door and landed on her butt. Wow, she said with a smile on her face. Kara giggled and said, Looks like it was worth the wait. Barbara nodded dumbly. Naruto finally woke from his shock and touched his lips. He sighed contently and walked to the car and entered as if on autopilot. Holly smiled widely at the scene. She drove the lover boy home and figured that she would get a report from him in the morning. 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, June 25th, Gotham. Shinobi stood on top of a spired building next to Batgirl. So, what are we after next? He asked. Batman told me to keep on the lookout for the Riddler, but he seems to be hitting small-time stuff like jewelry stores, she replied. Shinobi put his hand up to his ear and said, Alright, we're on it. Okay, looks like he hit another jewelry store again, but the police say that there is a clue that we might want to look at. The pair jumped off the building and headed north. Several minutes later they landed in front of jewelry store. A sergeant moved to the pair. "Glad you got here. Here's the note, it has already been dusted, but no prints were found," he said as he handed the piece of paper to Shinobi. He then cocked his head and said, "You know you look like a thief with that get-up." "Comes when you are a shinobi and are protecting my identity," Shinobi explained. He then looked at the noted and read it. "I have taken what glimmers, but I now am seeking what is clear." "Diamonds," Batgirl replied. She then continued, "Must be after the diamond exchange." She then pressed her ear and said, "Looks like he is after the diamond exchange. What do you want us to do?" "Roger, on the way," Shinobi replied. "On the way to what?" the officer asked. "We are on the way to the diamond exchange," Batgirl answered. The officer turned one of his men and said, "We need to head to the diamond exchange." Now Shinobi and Batgirl he turned and the pair were gone. He chuckled and said to himself, "Figures? Diamond exchange." Shinobi and Batgirl stood at the entrance while Shinobi continued to look at the door. "Why are stopping? It is open," she asked. "Trapped, give me a second and they're done." Shinobi pulled out a pin from the doorframe and Batgirl's eyes opened wide as she saw a lethal trap fall to pieces. He smiled and said, "Nothing for a shinobi." Well, the capes finally made it, the Riddler." He then frowned and said, "I was expecting someone from the League." Batgirl replied, "Sorry to disappoint you, but Batman is kind of busy with the Joker right now." "And all I get is his little girl want to be?" he asked in an annoyed tone. "Not quite," a voice from right next to him said. He turned to see Shinobi's fist smashing into his face. Riddler crumpled into a pile against the wall. Shinobi sighed and said, "That was kind of disappointing." "So a date tomorrow night, and then you can go out with the blonde?" Batgirl asked, as she tied up the Riddler. "Sure, but you're not against me seeing your friend?" Shinobi asked. A moment later the police entered the room with their guns drawn only to find the Riddler tied up and no one else present. 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, July 2nd, Gotham, Wayne Manor. Naruto stood in ready stance as a red-headed boy continued to circle him. Naruto's eyes continued to follow the boy, until he saw the boy begin to change trajectory and head towards Naruto. He stepped to the left just as the boy came at him and stuck out his arm. The boy was close-lined and fell to his back and slid a dozen feet away. Naruto jumped in the air and said, "Now I get it. I now understand telegraphing my attacks." "Good, now Wally, do you understand what you did?" Bruce asked. "Yeah, got my ass kicked," he replied in an annoyed tone. Bruce scowled as did Barry Allen. "You need to learn to focus more, Wally. That is why we came here for this exercise. Naruto is the best at martial arts in your age group and of all the sidekick," Barry explained. "I bet Aqualad could take him," Wally replied. "You would lose that bet," Kara said as she entered the room. "Hello, babe. How's about you and I hit the town?" Wally asked in a provocative tone. "Down, Tiger, she is taken as am I," Barbara said as she entered behind Kara and both girls took an arm from Naruto. "Man, he's the best with martial arts, can see me coming, and can beat Aqualad, not to mention he's got 2 girls," Wally said in a complaining tone. "Call it karma," Naruto said. "What a good life?" Wally asked. "No, very hard life and the scales might be evening out," Naruto replied in a depressed tone. "What does he mean?" Wally asked. "That is for him to explain, not us," Bruce replied. He then clapped his hand and said, "Okay, Barbara, Kara, Dick and Wally, all of you against Naruto." Barbara, Kara and Dick quickly advanced on Naruto, only for Wally to hesitate. Naruto ducked a punch from Kara only to block a kick from Barbara and then jumped back to avoid an attack from Dick. Wally advanced quickly and attempted to get behind Naruto, only for him to land in front of him and take him down with a leg sweep. He quickly turned and charged the trio. Wally watched as Naruto's speed increased and quickly disabled both Barbara and Dick with 2 quick moves. He was no standing facing Kara. Both took fighting stances and Kara moved first only for Naruto to counter with his own punch. The fists collided. There was a shockwave, throwing the 3 junior heroes off their feet. Naruto shook his left hand and said, "Man, that hurt." "You sure you want to go head-to-head with me, Naruto-kun?" Kara asked playfully. Naruto smirked and replied, "I sure do, Kara-chan." Kage-bunshin. Suddenly there were 3 Narutos standing in front of the Kryptonian. "No fair," Kara complained. "This is a spar and we have moved it up to superpowers, so I'm going to win." If you win, we go on a third date, Naruto said with a smile. Kara's eyes began to glow, and suddenly 2 of the Narutos went up in smoke. Naruto frowned and she said, "Well, you did say we had upped it to superpowers." Naruto sighed and replied, "Yes, I give, you win and we can go out tonight." "What that was it?" Wally asked. "You want to fight a Kryptonian who wants a date with you?" Naruto asked with a smile. "You have point," Wally replied with a smile. The rest of the day was having Naruto working with them on kata. This reinforced his own kata, and had them learn better how to defend themselves against an opponent who knew how to fight. Not that it registered too much with Wally. 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, July 4th, North Carolina woods. Naruto stood in shorts and shirt, while having a heavily laden backpack on his back. He looked back to see his companions who were also heavily laden, Holly Robinson, Barbara Gordon, and Kara Kent. Naruto chuckled at the memory of the last week. He had gone on a second date with Barbara and a first date with Kara. Superman had broken the kiss that Kara had given him, but it was worth it. He still couldn't for the life of him understand why the girls weren't fighting over dating him. Holly didn't tell him about the talk she had had with the girls and that the dating was for relationship building over the next couple years. She had also imposed a rule of no fighting over Naruto, to which they quickly agreed. Naruto looked down at the map and then at the landscape. His smile widened at the view. Holly had picked a spot and told them that they were going to be roughing it, and she wasn't kidding. They had camping gear and provisions for a week trip. The packs were heavy for a normal human, but with a Kryptonian and a shinobi the weight was not a problem. They had made good time, since they had started at the trailhead at 9 this morning. He had found a great spot under a waterfall to make camp of the group. He had set up the camp while the girls gathered firewood and got the fishing tackle out for fishing. Naruto had moved several rocks around to make the camp a little more habitable. Both Barbara and Kara gasped when he pulled off his shirt. Holly just smirked and continued to get the camp ready. "Those are some pretty bad scars, Naruto," Barbara said worriedly. "Yeah, would have been fatal for most people. Got this one," pointing to the round one on his right chest, from Sasuke team, Chidori through the chest. "This one, a ragged on in the center of his chest. This was from his clawed hand after his Chidori ran out, just before I got here." Holly smirked at the girls now fawning over him like a hurt puppy. "Finish getting your stuff unpacked, we have to be ready by sundown. Then we're playing strip poker and nude bathing," she said with glee, much to the girls' shock. Naruto just sighed at her antics. Naruto sat on a log near the fire while the girls were in the larger tent changing. Barbara asked Holly, "Why did Naruto invite both of us here?" Holly smiled and replied, "He likes you both, and since I'm like a big sister to him, and he has never really learned how to deal with women his own age, he is further learning how to deal with women. You both know how he was treated in his home village, right?" Both girls nodded agreement, and she continued, "I suffer from androphobia, while he suffers from mild gynophobia. I admit we take baths together." Kara looked at her and asked, "You mean in the nude?" Holly nodded and replied, "He and I were hurt by people we cared about deeply, or at least we convinced ourselves we did. I was raped by my father, after having been a prostitute for a few years. Willingly having is different than having it forced upon you. He discovered that I was his daughter, and was also a prostitute. The sick man said it was to turn me away from that lifestyle. The sicker had me locked up to be his personal toy for 6 months. Selena, with the help of Batman, rescued me, and in a fit of rage and insanity I killed him. Half of his fortune had already been lost to Selena, who was the rightful owner of that money anyways, and the other half was given to me after I was discharged to her care, thanks to Bruce Wayne. Naruto, on the other hand, had to deal with a world where men were persecuted for being somewhat perverted, while the women got off scot-free. He developed a fascination with the girl who he was nice to and got it in his head that to get to know a girl you have to date her, not just befriend her. The nude baths with which Selena and Helena occasionally partake in are more of a family bonding than anything else. We hug, but it isn't UAL. We love and care about him, and the reason for the nudity is to show him we have nothing to hide. He does sometimes get a little excited with me, but it is just him being a teenage boy with a pretty woman showing him affection, while both of us are nude." She took a breath and continued, "He has failed so many times it is just astounding, but with each failure he learns. He gave you both good dates, at least that is what I got from yours and his reactions at the end of the dates." "Yeah, I had an incredible time," Barbara said, but then said, but I've only been out with him and heard horror stories from my friends, and seen the other dates that he went on. I'm from Kansas and the Kents are pretty protective of me, so I really don't know what a good date is from a bad one, Kara admitted. Holly chuckled and explained, a bad date is one you don't want repeated, and a good one leaves you with a warm feeling inside. I have that just being around him, Kara said with a blush. You girls still need to date a couple more boys to help make up your minds about Naruto. He likes both of you and doesn't want to break either of your hearts, Holly explained. But we agreed to share him, Barbara said with a blush. Holly laughed and said sorry, but it doesn't quite work like that. You can date and sleep with whomever you want when you reach 18, but marriage is a two-person thing, polygamy is illegal. Naruto stood on a small pond at the base of a waterfall, while doing kata in his swimming trunks, when the girls came out of the tent. Barbara and Kara looked at him in curiosity. They watched as he slowly increased the pace of the kata, until Barbara could barely keep up. She had to ease her focus to actually follow his movements. After 5 minutes of him moving at blazing speed, he stopped and made a hand seal, and a second Naruto appeared in a cloud of smoke. They then bowed to each other and began to spar, and again the speed increased to a point where Kara was having trouble following. Both Naruto then created a second clone beside themselves and then started to form a blue spinning ball. They then smashed the balls together and created an explosion. One disappeared in a puff of smoke while the real Naruto flew back and landed on the water. He was breathing heavily. Wow, that was powerful. I never knew he knew something so powerful, Barbara said in amazement. Holly smirked and said, that could probably injure Superman. That could hurt Kal-El? Kara asked in amazement. Naruto fell into the water. He surfaced a minute later and shook his head. He then swam towards the shore. Barbara sighed and said quietly, I can't believe I'm ogling my best friend who's male. Kara giggled and said, ogle all you want. Naruto got out of the water and wore a confused look as both of the girls were looking him up and down. He then asked in confusion, what? Both girls blushed and replied, oh, nothing. Holly giggled and pulled off her shirt, revealing a bikini top. Both girls watched Naruto not even bat an eye at the revealing top, not even when she pulled down her pants to show a small bikini bottom. They watched as Holly entered the water and began to splash Naruto, who returned the attack with gusto. Both Barbara and Kara looked at each other, and then entered the tent quickly. Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, what's up with them? Holly smirked and replied, hormones. Naruto scratched the back of his head and asked, am I that way? Holly giggled and replied, you will be in a minute or two. Naruto began to splash Holly again. Several minutes passed until the two girls came out of the tent. Naruto noticed Kara was in a conservative bikini and Barbara was in a smaller bikini than Kara, but then Naruto noticed something was off. He blushed and then pointed to Kara. Naruto became nervous, but neither girl could understand why. Kara, you're showing! Holly exclaimed. Kara looked down and saw nothing showing from her top, but then looked down to see the bottom was out of adjustment and showing both her lower hair and a single lip. She blushed and quickly pulled the front of the suit out and over to cover herself. Holly sighed and said, see, told you she was a natural blonde, bet Babs is a natural redhead. Naruto blushed and replied, not something I'm going to try to find out anytime soon. Barbara smirked and asked, what, you don't want to see me nude? Naruto put his hands up defensively and said, no. I don't want your father to kill me for defiling his daughter. He then turned to Kara and said, I don't want Superman to kill me for what I just saw. Both girls began to laugh. Barbara then said, you're stuck with us, Naruto. Holly told us that we will have to date a couple other guys to figure out what we want, but until then you're stuck with us. And if we want to flash you, all the better for you. Naruto crossed his arms and then asked, is it me or are most of the girls on this world perverts? Holly just hugged the blushing blonde and replied, you're just lucky. Naruto sighed as the other two joined in the hug. He couldn't really complain, since his head was firmly at the breast level of all three girls. Erosenin would love it here, Naruto said happily. Don't worry, you'll get taller over the next few years, Holly said as Kara buried Naruto's face into her small breasts. The rest of the afternoon was spent playing in the water, while some of Naruto's clones continued to practice his Rasengan. The rest of the week followed a routine: wake up, goof off, do some fishing, games, enjoy the company, and finally go to sleep. Of course, Holly would occasionally do something to spice things up, like pants Naruto, and watch as Barbara would just blush at seeing him in his birthday suit. Kara wasn't looking at the time. They also found out that Barbara was a true redhead when her bikini bottom was pulled off by Holly in full view of Naruto. This caused some embarrassment, but not too much. July 11th, 12:32 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, South Carolina Wilderness. Naruto had finished getting the camp packed up and was waiting for the girls to finish their bath. He had stopped trying to worry about seeing the girls, since Holly had found a private spot for them to bathe. Naruto suddenly dropped into a fighting stance and said, "You can come out now." A clapping was heard from the bushes towards the forest. A man with a goatee and silver streaks in his receding hair said, "Impressive, Shinobi. You could sense us, but showed no inclination to attack until we came close. I would have considered you for a replacement, but you still lack experience." Ras Al Ghul. "What are you doing in the backwaters of the Carolinas?" Naruto asked. "I've come to test you, boy," Raz replied with a smile. Suddenly a group of 20 ninja-clad men jumped into the clearing. Naruto sighed and said, "It will take more than just 20 to test me. Multi-shadow clone jutsu." Suddenly there were 5 Narutos in the clearing. He then smiled and said, "I'm a one-man army, but this should make quick work of you wannabes." "Indeed," Raz replied with a smirk. His smirk grew into a full-grown grin when Naruto and his clones disabled the ninja in less than 5 seconds. "I'm impressed, Shinobi. You have exceeded my expectations and I will come later with something for you," he said, as he walked backwards into the woods. Naruto smirked as he watched the ninja try to quickly disappear into the woods. The girls came around some bushes clad only in their underwear and carrying the rest of their clothes. Naruto smirked at the sight and said, "We had guests, but they only came to say hi." Barbara picked up a discarded sword and asked, "Guests? What type of guests come with swords?" "The type you don't invite home," Naruto replied, with a smirk. "Raz?" Holly asked. "Raz," Naruto replied in dry tone. "You don't mean Ras Al Ghul, do you?" Barbara asked. "The very same, with about 20 henchmen. You can't call them ninja when you compare them to me," Naruto replied with a chuckle. "How many did you make?" Holly asked. "About 5. What, did I overdo it?" he asked. Holly began to laugh and pull on her shorts. "Nah, but your mother is going to be a little annoyed that Raz came by and annoyed her kid," she said while continuing to laugh. Kara looked the trio in confusion and asked, "Who is this Ras Al Ghul?" "Leader of the League of Shadows, an assassin organization, which tried to recruit the Batman several years back." "Are they after you now, Naruto?" Barbara asked. "No, I'm not seasoned enough," he replied. "So we have to watch out for them in Gotham now?" Barbara asked. "Not sure, we'll let Bats know about this though," Naruto explained. Naruto sat down and watched the girls getting dressed. Barbara and Kara both giggled at being ogled by Naruto. July 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Wayne Mansion. "So you say that you were approached by Ras Al Ghul?" Bruce asked. "Yeah, he had about 20 of his goons try and take me. I made short work of them, but also showed one of my abilities and went a little overboard. He had 20 and I made about 5 clones," Naruto admitted. "I'll say that you went overboard," Selena exclaimed. She then sighed and said, "This isn't a coincidence. First the Joker, the Riddler, now Raz, who next, the Scarecrow or maybe Harvey Dent. Joker, I can understand, you, me and he have history. Raz has always had his own agenda. Heck, I wouldn't put it past Talia to come out of the woodwork," Bruce said offhandedly. "About that," Selena said, with some trepidation. "What is it, Selena?" Bruce asked. "I still need to talk to you about something. Now, a couple of somethings," she replied cryptically. "What did you need to tell me about?" Bruce asked. Naruto sighed and sat back in the couch. Selena took Bruce's hands into her own and said, "How do I put this?" "You just come out and say it," Naruto replied in an annoyed tone. Selena glared at Naruto and said, "I guess it has been almost 7 years since we were intimate." "Yes, but what does that have to do with anything?" Bruce asked. "For being vaunted as the detective by Raz, you're denser than I am," Naruto replied. Bruce scowled at Naruto, and then looked at Selena in confusion. She then said, "Bruce, you're a father?" "Yes, I have dick," Bruce replied. Selena sighed and said in a patient tone, "You have actual children, Bruce." Bruce raised an eyebrow and asked, "What do you mean?" Naruto sighed, put his index left finger and thumb together. He then took his other index finger and pushed it into the circle his other hand created and said, "You know, the horizontal mambo, sticking it in." Bruce looked surprised and exclaimed, "But I thought. What, that your 1 month stand with the Catwoman didn't have any consequences? Or your romp with Talia didn't give you a child?" she asked pointedly. He looked at Selena and asked in surprise, "You and Talia?" "Yes, Bruce, Helena Kyle Wayne and Damon Al Ghul Wayne are you children. We have done well so far in raising them, but would like for you to spend some time with them. We don't need money and we will keep their true identity a secret. Even from Raz. You don't have to feel compelled to marry either of us, just spend some time with your children," Selena said in a caring tone. Bruce sighed and said, "Whatever you need." Selena smirked and Naruto said, "You just got yourself into trouble." Bruce looked at Naruto in confusion, but then Selena asked in a seductive voice, "Anything?" Bruce now understood what the boy meant. He then nodded in capitulation. July 14th, 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Wayne Manor. Naruto was in the gym on the gymnastic rings, doing spins. Dick Grayson entered the room and watched in awe as Naruto continued to several more spins on the rings. He then watched Naruto complete a full routine for the rings. Naruto then jumped down, but as he landed he asked, "So what do you think?" Dick replied, "Not bad, Shinobi." Naruto chuckled and grabbed a towel and wiped the sweat from his brow. "Would have thought you would be still sleeping in, boy wonder," he said with a grin. "Nah, keeping up with Bruce makes it so that I have learned to sleep less and get it where I can," Dick replied. "So a short run?" Naruto asked. "Sure," Dick replied as he stretched. He didn't understand what he was in for. The pair ran from one end of the property to the other faster than Dick could have imagined. As he was lying against the wall in the workout room he asked, "You could give Kid Flash a run for his money?" Naruto chuckled and replied, "I probably could, but he might have better overall speed than me." Dick laughed and attempted to disappear. Naruto smirked at the echoing laughter of Dick. "Nice try, but I saw you disappear." "Try this," Naruto said, but then his form turned into an afterimage. Dick's voice sounded depressed and he said, "No fair. You were raised to be a ninja, I only learned from Bruce." Naruto sighed and said, "I wasn't that good as a shinobi, but with the help I've gotten better, and I keep improving." Dick chuckled and said, "Pretty soon you'll be on Superman's level." He then sighed and said, "You know, me and the others with sidekicks are thinking about us joining the league? What do you think about that?" Naruto took a thinking pose and replied, "Could be interesting, but I bet they don't take you in right away." Dick looked at Naruto in confusion and asked, "What do you mean?" Naruto put his hand up and pointed to his index finger. "First, you're almost 13. In a year or so you'll still be seen as a kid." Dick scowled and said, "You're still a kid?" Naruto chuckled and replied, "Yeah, but I've got experience as a professional shinobi." Naruto's mood turned down and he said, "Man, I miss Konoha." Dick smiled and said, "I understand, I miss my parents, but I'm glad that Bruce took me in like Selena took you in." Naruto smiled and wore a faraway look. "Yeah, I wouldn't trade anything for my time here. I just know that there is something that I have to do back on my world. I'm just not sure what," he explained cryptically. Dick chuckled and said, "So you and Wally going to do that speed test?" Naruto shrugged and replied, "I'm sure that he has the all-out speed to beat me, but I got the stamina." "So how is Roy doing?" Dick scratched his head and replied, "He is working hard to get Green Arrow to get all of us into the league. He seems to have a drive for it, more so than the rest of us." "How are your girlfriends doing and how did you get to?" Naruto chuckled and replied, "Good karma, I guess. Other than a visit by Ra's al Ghul, we seem to be fine. Kara is back in Smallville and Barbara is home with the commissioner. Nope, she is here, isn't that right, Barbara-chan?" Barbara came around from one of the pillars in the room and smiled shyly at the boys. "You caught me. When did you know I was here?" she asked. "About 5 minutes ago," Naruto replied. He then kissed her on the cheek and took her into a hug. "I always like those," she said as she deepened the hug. Dick sighed and said, "Aren't you wanting to join the league?" Barbara shook her head and replied, "Nah, I'm happy being who I am." Dick smiled and said, "I'm glad you're happy, but Bruce told me next 4th we will be inducted into the league." Naruto chuckled and said, "Good luck with that. Ready for a spar, you two?" Barbara smiled and replied, "Yeah, but no clones." Naruto chuckled and said, "Won't need one." The trio moved to a mat and began to spar. Bruce and Selena entered the room holding hands. The pair watched the trio spar. Naruto's improved quite a bit. His stance is much better. Selena smiled and said, "He isn't trying yet. He could keep up with Kid Flash with his speed. I think it would be good for them to spar again. Other than that, he would have to tame down his strength. Heck, he has been going rounds with Supergirl and winning. Being a shinobi has really helped his ability to do the hero gig. He has spent a few nights out with you guys, but he also has been out with me and Holly. He's almost league material." Bruce smiled and said, "They all are, but it will take time for them to be in the league. The problem is the league's other members. They want to have a probationary period for them when we have them join next July." "So who are the hopefuls?" Selena asked. "Robin, Speedy, Kid and Aqua Lad," Bruce explained. "Not Batgirl or Supergirl?" Selena asked. Bruce shook his head and replied, "Barbara seems to have no interest. I've asked her, but Kara is limited by Superman." Selena chuckled and said, "So the Boy Scout has a problem with his relatives joining the family business." Bruce chuckled and said, "Yes, something like that. He just isn't ready for her to join the club." Selena traced a finger along his jawline and asked, "So will I get an invite to the league?" Bruce furrowed his brow and replied, "They are not ready for you just yet." Selena chuckled and said, "Too bad. It would pay to get some more women in the Justice League." Bruce chuckled and replied, "You and Holly would be good additions in my opinion. It would also cause the other rogues to leave you alone. The only problem is that you're known better than most about your secret identity." Selena clapped as Naruto was able to knock both Barbara and Dick on their backs one right after the other in one maneuver. She then noticed both Barbara and Dick were both sweating, while Naruto was just starting to break a sweat. Bruce moved closer and took up a fighting stance. Naruto smirked, and thus began a spar between Bruce and Naruto. Selena watched and was impressed that Naruto would seem to lose the advantage only for the tide of the spar to change. This continued for another 20 minutes before Bruce held up a hand and said, "I have to admit that you're better than when you came here, Naruto. I'm quite impressed, and I think that we can move on to you have an occasional spar with Superman." Naruto wiped the sweat off his face with a towel that Barbara handed him. He nodded to the acknowledgement. He then grabbed a bottle and said, "Watch this." He walked outside and opened the bottle. He put his hand on the bottle and appeared to concentrate. He pulled his hand away and the water began to move out of the bottle and form around his hand. Some of the water was falling away from his hand. Naruto appeared in deep concentration and then moved his hand back to the bottle and slowly the water went back into the bottle. The bottle was only about half full. He then said, "I think I'm getting water manipulation. I figure it will take a few more months before I can try to work on any jutsu with it, but I can manipulate water. I figured it would be like doing the Rasengan, and getting control of the elements would be something like that. I figured that water would be the easiest, since it would be the easiest to manipulate and see results. Fire, earth, air, and lightning are going to be more difficult." Bruce nodded and said, "I think you have a good start on your beginning of a new jutsu." Naruto beamed at the praise. Selena walked over and hugged Naruto. She then said, "Well, time to go. I'll take you home, Barbara." She smiled and replied, "Thanks, Ms. Kyle. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow RaiderXV for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.